Manipulation, a guide to mind control techniques, stealth persuasion, and dark psychology secrets. Written by Deborah Weiss. Narrated by Sam Slidell. Introduction. The following chapters will discuss everything that you need to know about manipulation and mind control. Do you want to make sure that you can get others to agree with what you like? Are you interested in getting a better lifestyle, getting people to purchase something, and so much more? If so, then this guidebook is so amazing, especially if you like to learn about manipulation and how it can help you out. This guidebook is going to spend some time talking about manipulation and so much more. We will look at what manipulation is about and some examples of manipulation that we are going to find in our day-to-day lives. We will then take a look at some of the advantages of using manipulation and why you may want to make sure that you learn how to use it. From there, we will move on to some of the fundamentals of manipulation, some of the ethical things to consider when you decide to use manipulation, and much more. Then we will spend some time learning about the analysis part of manipulation, and why it is so important for you to spend time learning more about the personality types of your target, so that you make sure that you tailor the techniques that you use against the target. Next, we will look at some of the best times to use manipulation, and when it can be beneficial for you to really bring out your skills, before moving on to the 3 best techniques that you can use for manipulating others, and how each of these techniques can be modified to work with the main personality types. Then this guidebook will talk about what you can do if your manipulation tactics get caught by the target, how to pay attention to your own body language, and what it is saying to the target so that you can be as successful as possible without the target figuring out what you are doing. There are a lot of times when you will want to work with manipulation in order to get what you want. Even though there are a lot of negative thoughts that come with this, there are actually a lot of different reasons why you would want to work with manipulation in your own life. When you are ready to learn about manipulation and how you can use it in your life to get what you want, make sure to check out this guidebook to help you get started. There are plenty of books on this subject on the market. Thanks again for choosing this one. Every effort was made to ensure it is full of as much useful information as possible. Please enjoy. Chapter 1. What is manipulation? When it comes to manipulation, it seems that a lot of people underestimate how powerful it can be, and oftentimes they will misunderstand what is going on with this art form. It is common to see the word manipulation and believe automatically that the other person is trying to be emotionally abusive, mean, and cruel. We automatically associate a lot of negative traits back to the words. While it is possible for people to use manipulation in a negative way, it is important to remember that there are some positive parts of manipulation as well. Because so many people see manipulation as a negative thing, it can prevent them from realizing just how powerful of a psychological art form manipulation can be. Furthermore, many people fail to understand that pretty much each of us already uses manipulation in one manner or another, just by living our day-to-day lives. While we may not automatically see this kind of behavior as manipulation, we all will have some degree of practice with using it. Learning how to manipulate effectively doesn't mean that you are heading out into the world and trying to create some abusive patterns between yourself and those around you. Instead, it just means that you know what you want, and you have refined the method that you want to use to get it. When it is all said and done, if someone doesn't really want to give in to what you want, they won't. Manipulation isn't about the pressure put on the other person. The best manipulators don't force someone into doing something that they don't want to do. Instead, it is more about helping someone see the value in helping you and doing what you would like, and then building up from there. Before we start to look at some of the techniques that you can use with manipulation, we first need to dig deeper into what manipulation is all about, how and why manipulation tends to work, and when you would decide to work with manipulation in your own life. What is manipulation? To those who aren't fully aware of manipulation and what it is all about, it is hard to see that this process actually takes up 3 steps: Most of us will just think of manipulation as one thing. There actually need to be two things in addition to the act of manipulation, which will make sure that the manipulation is successful. These include the analysis, which happens first, and the persuasion, which is going to take place for most of the conversation with the victim, but is especially going to show up after the manipulation. Understanding that there is more to the art of manipulation than just the act of manipulation itself is going to help you understand more about what can make the process more successful. While beginners may think that they are able to do it without the persuasion and the analysis aspects, you will quickly find that the results aren't as good if you miss these two parts, and that you are less likely to get the things that you want. How and why does manipulation work? Despite what it may seem, manipulation is actually going to work in a simple manner. For the most part, people are going to be automatically wired to say no to something the first time that they hear about it, especially if whoever is asking the question is someone the victim doesn't know or trust already. When it is someone that the victim trusts, they are more likely to really think about the question, and there is a higher odds of them saying yes. Let's assume for a moment that you don't already know the other person, and that you haven't been able to build up their trust before you work to manipulate them. As a result, anytime that you ask the other person for something, they are just going to tell you no. The idea that comes with this one is pretty simple. We do not typically like to take things from people who we do not have trust in. It is sort of like taking candy from a stranger, or letting a stranger do something for you that could potentially leave you vulnerable and exposed to some sort of threat. These are things that we just wouldn't do. When someone we don't really know or trust asks you for something, there is always going to be that natural inclination to say no to them because we don't have enough trust and history with this person to know what the result isn't going to be devastating in one way or another for us in the end. The same is going to be true of others when you try to manipulate them. If you ask someone for a favor, there is a high chance that they will also say no to you, unless you already know them and have built up trust with them. Of course, there are steps that you can take that can help you build up those feelings a bit quicker, so that you can get that yes much faster. With some practice and a bit more knowledge about the different manipulation techniques, you will be able to manipulate others and get a yes from them in no time. Bad manipulation. There are a lot of different types of manipulation that are available throughout the world, and often we are going to think about the bad form of manipulation. This is due to the fact that most of us have heard about manipulation from books, movies, and the news. These sources are just going to spend time talking about manipulation and all of the bad things that had happened when someone used manipulation. How many times, for example, have you turned on the television and heard about some group or cult who took advantage of someone, or maybe a smaller group of people, and gotten them to change their whole personalities and more? You may have heard about some people being willing to kill, attack, and do more, even though they were the calmest and most controlled person in the world before this all happens. Now, this is a little extreme, but there are many times when the manipulation is going to be seen as a negative thing. When this happens, it usually is because the manipulator is looking to get what they want, to gain something, without caring what happens to the other person. They may even want the target to become dependent on them to ensure that they can come back and use that person as often as they would like. The target in this situation is often going to be the one who is harmed or hurt in some manner. Whether they are physically harmed in the process, or they are just led to believe that they aren't worth anything at all, you will find that it can be really damaging to the target. The one person who is going to be able to benefit with this kind of manipulation is the manipulator. When would I need to manipulate someone? There are actually quite a few times when you would have the desire to manipulate someone else. One example of this is a salesperson who wants to make a sale. Through the use of some of the strategies we will talk about for manipulation, the salesperson would be able to develop any opportunities that are needed to easily and quickly establish a rapport. Once that rapport is set up, they will find that the sale with the victim, or the customer in this case, is going to lose quickly. people are much less likely to give you the answer of no when they trust you, and you can get them to take the time to listen to your offer. This can also be true when it comes to making any recommendations as needed, requesting someone to come help you, and pretty much any other time that you are trying to get your way. The idea is that if you would like to convince someone else to get what you want, you will make sure that you are never harmful to someone else in the process. You could use manipulation to help you get the thing that you want. When should I avoid manipulating someone? Despite all the power that can come with manipulation, there are going to be some times when you shouldn't use it at all. You will find that people can't be manipulated unless there is some willingness for this to happen. If you come across someone who is completely against agreeing with you and doing what you are asking them to do, there is no way that you can come in and change their mind without calling on manipulation tactics that are often seen as abusive, cruel, and harsh. If you really want to master the art of manipulation, you must make sure that the delicate boundaries are kept and that you work on the right strategies without being harmful to the other person in the process. There are going to be times when the victim says no to you, and as the manipulator, you need to respect the no that they give. Of course, this doesn't mean that you have to give up completely. You could still call on some of the tactics of persuasion to see if you can organically get the other person to change their mind. However, you should not try to force the other person to change their mind or opinion. When you try to force your ideas on the other person, this is where the idea of manipulation starts to turn into a bad thing that needs to be avoided. How to spot manipulation. All of us want to make sure that our needs are getting met, but most of us are not going to rely on underhanded methods to make this happen. A manipulator, on the other side of things, is more than happy to covertly influence someone with abusive tactics or indirect and deceptive tactics. There are many times that these manipulators may seem like they are nice and friendly, and they can be good at flattery. They know how to make the other person feel important, but in reality, the manipulator only does this as a way to achieve their own ulterior motives. Manipulation can go the other way as well. Sometimes they will lean more to using hostility and abuse in order to gain what they want. When this happens, the objective with that person is just to gain power, more than trying to gain anything else. In some cases, the victim won't even realize that they are being intimidated in a conscious manner. There are a lot of weapons that a manipulator likes to use, and they are not afraid to bring as many of these out to help them as physically possible. They could use foot-in-the-door reversals, evasiveness, sympathy, apologies, fake concern, comparing, denying, complaining, feigning that they are ignorant or innocent, and so much more. If they can use a method to get what they want, no matter how underhanded it may be, the manipulator isn't going to feel bad for using that to their advantage. There are some manipulators who are going to deny that they made certain promises, that certain agreements had ever been reached, or even that a conversation had ever occurred. They can even blame their victim for something that the victim didn't do, just so they can gain power or sympathy. This is an approach that is used to break out of an agreement, promise, and date. You may even see a form of manipulation with parents who like to use bribery, such as, "Finish your dinner to get dessert." Another thing that you can watch out for with manipulation is that the manipulator is often going to voice assumptions about your beliefs and intentions, and then they will react to these as if they were true. This is one of the ways that they can justify their own actions or feelings. At the same time, they will continue to deny what the victim has said in the conversation. The manipulator may act as if something had been decided on or agreed upon when it hasn't, because this can help to put down any of the objections that you could have about the situation. The foot-in-the-door technique, which we are going to talk about a bit more later in this guidebook, is a technique that can be favored by many manipulators. With this one, the manipulator is going to make a small request, one that you are likely to agree to help them out with. This small request is followed by the real request, and this one is usually a lot larger. The victim may find that it is harder to say no to this second request because they have already said yes to the other one. If the victim does try to say no to the second request, the manipulator is ready to jump in and act like the offended party. They will turn around the words of the victim quite a bit, and they will make sure that they are the one is hurt in this scenario, in the hopes of getting the victim to do what they want. They are very skilled at making sure that the situation is about them and their complaints, and that puts the victim on the defensive, even though they had been willing to help out with the original request. Faking concern is another technique that a lot of manipulators are going to use to get what they want. This method is a good one because it can undermine the confidence and the decisions that come with the victim, because the manipulator is willing to use warnings and worry about the victim. Another thing that you can look for when it comes to manipulators is the idea of emotional blackmail. The manipulator could use guilt, shame, threats, intimidation, and rage to get the victim to do what they would like. Shaming can be used because it will create some self-doubt in the victim and can make them very insecure about what they have said or done. Often the shame is going to be hidden in a type of compliment, such as saying, "I'm surprised that you of all people would stoop to that." In some cases, the blackmailer is going to try and frighten their victim with anger in order to force that victim to sacrifice their own needs and wants. If this doesn't end up working for them, the manipulator could switch from being frightening to being angry. The victim will notice the change and will feel so relieved at the change that they will agree to do whatever the manipulator wants. You can also watch out for what is known as passive-aggressive behavior. When you have trouble saying no to the other person, you may agree to things that you don't really want to do, and then you can still get your way by forgetting, being late, or doing it half-heartedly. In most cases, passive aggression is going to be a way for you, or the manipulator, to express hostility. Forgetting on purpose can help you to conveniently avoid the thing that you didn't want to do in the first place, and helps you get back at your partner. Of course, sometimes we do this without realizing it. Maybe we actually do forget to do something because we don't hold it as important enough to remember. Sometimes it happens without meaning to hurt the other person. We just don't want to do it. However, the manipulator is going to take it a bit further and will try to get the other person to do what they want, or will get out of something that they don't want to do by conveniently forgetting or not doing the work the way that they should. As you can see, manipulators are going to come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. It is hard to know for sure whether you are dealing with a manipulator or not, because they often can use many faces, and often you are pretty close to them from the start. A manipulator isn't going to be someone who just randomly comes into your life one day. You already know that these brand new people need to build up your trust, and that can take some time. For the most part, when you are being manipulated, it is going to be by the people who are close to you, a friend, family, or even a co-worker. Learning the signs of manipulation and asking yourself the right questions to see whether manipulation may be going on can be the first steps to take to help protect yourself. If you know what is going on and can speak about it from the beginning, you will find that it is easier to avoid the manipulator. Manipulators want to get what matters to them. If the other person is putting up a big fight or is called on to what the manipulator is doing, then the manipulator is going to find someone else. Dominance. The manipulator may choose to meet with their victim to discuss something in the car, office, home, or in some other space where they feel more ownership and familiarity, while the victim may not be familiar with these at all. The victim will usually agree to meet in this place because they think that the manipulator is nice and hospitable. This allows the manipulator to have the upper hand that they are looking for. But the victim is not going to realize that this is what is going on until it is too late. Allowing you to speak first. Many manipulators like to allow their victim to speak first. This can work in several ways. First, the victim is going to leave with the false sense that they were the ones in charge, or that the manipulator was deferring back to them. But in reality, the manipulator likes to let their victim speak first, so that they can get a baseline for where the victim is, sniff out any of the weaknesses, and then uses this to their own advantage along the way. This is something that you will see with sales quite a bit. The salespeople will ask their victim some general and probing questions. This allows them to establish the baseline of the victim's behavior and thinking. From here, they can get a good idea of your weaknesses and strengths. This type of questioning will have a hidden agenda, and we may be able to find it in other places of our lives, such as in personal relationships and in the workplace. Changing around the facts. If the manipulator is able to change up some of the facts that are present in the discussion, they are going to do so. They are especially going to do this if they find that changing up the facts will put them in a better light. There are a lot of examples of this that we can see in our day-to-day lives. They may show a one-sided bias of the issues or work with exaggeration. Sometimes the manipulator will strategically withhold information that is key to the victim making a good decision. They may try to blame the victim for causing their own victimization. They may deform the truth. They may lie and make excuses up as well. Adding in lots of statistics and facts. There are some manipulators who like to use the idea of intellectual bullying against their victim. This is done when the manipulator presumes to be the expert and the one who is the most knowledgeable in certain areas. The manipulator is going to be able to accomplish this technique by taking advantage of their victim, using alleged facts, statistics, and some other data, especially if this information is stuff that the victim may not know much about. We may see this kind of tactic when we are looking at financial and sales situations. In these, the professional is going to presume that they have the expert power over you, and they hope that because of this, they will be able to push through their own agenda onto you easier. Some people like to use this kind of technique just for the benefit of feeling a sense of intellectual superiority over other people. Overwhelming you with red tape. In some cases, the manipulator is going to work to overwhelm their victims with the use of a lot of red tapes and a lot of procedures. This is a tactic that is known as bureaucracy. This is going to include a lot of laws and bylaws, procedures, paperwork, committees, and a ton of other roadblocks that are put in place simply for the idea of making the life of the victim more difficult. In addition to helping the manipulator have the upper hand over their victim, the manipulator could use this technique in order to delay any truth-seeking and fact-finding. It is a good way to distract the victim who may be catching on to the manipulator, and it can help hide the weaknesses and flaws of the manipulator while ensuring that they are able to evade scrutiny as much as possible. Raising their voice to showcase the negative emotions. The next thing that the manipulator could do is raise their voice to make sure that the victim knows that they are going through negative emotion. This can often happen during a discussion to showcase a form of aggressive manipulation. The assumption of the manipulator here is that if they project their voice and make it loud enough, or if they display enough negative emotions, the victim is more likely to submit and give the manipulator what they want. Along with the loud and aggressive voice, the manipulator is often going to work on their body language to get the message across a bit more. They will make sure that their body language is strong, such as standing tall or using a lot of gestures that show anger, excitement, and more, in order to increase the impact of what they are saying. Surprises that are done in a negative manner. Some manipulators like to work with surprises that are considered negative in order to put their victims off balance, and because it allows them to gain the psychological advantage. There are several ways that the manipulator is able to do this. They could lowball during a situation of negotiations, or the manipulator could have a sudden profession that they won't be able to come through and do the thing that they had promised before. In most cases, the unexpected negative information is going to come to the victim without any warning. This makes it hard for the victim to prepare and try to counter the move in the way that they would like. In the end, the manipulator could ask for some additional concessions from their victim in order to continue working together. Limiting the amount of time to decide. One technique that can be really useful for a manipulator is to limit the amount of time that the other person gets to make a decision. When the victim feels like they are limited on time, they are more likely to go along with what the manipulator wants, even though they aren't sure about the decision and they weren't given the right time to think it all through. And this is exactly what the manipulator wants to see happen. The idea of giving the victim little time to decide on things is a common negotiation and sales tactic. This is where the manipulator is going to put some pressure on the other person to make up their decision, often before the victim is ready to make that decision. When you apply the tension and the control over the other person, the hope is that they are going to crack, and then they will give in to the demands of the aggressor. Poking at your weaknesses. Some manipulators are fond of making critical remarks, but then will disguise these remarks as sarcasm and humor. They can do this to make their victim feel inferior and less secure. But the humor helps the manipulator to save face and look better when the victim starts to get offended. In the process, they are able to make the victim seem less secure and inferior. There are a lot of examples that come to mind with this one. The manipulator can have comments that will range from your personal belongings, your credentials and background, your appearance, and the fact that you came into the office just a few minutes late and seemed to be out of breath. The manipulator likes to point out the things that you did wrong, so they can impose their own psychological superiority over the victim. Criticism and judgment against you. This behavior is going to be distinct from some of the other behaviors that we have talked about. In those, humor was a kind of cover that the manipulator could use in order to say what they want and then turn it back against the victim. However, with this one, the manipulator is doing away with the joking and is outright just picking on their victim. By constantly marginalizing, ridiculing, and dismissing their victim, the manipulator is able to keep their victim off balance, while also making sure that they, the manipulator, is able to maintain their own superiority. The aggressor would use this tactic in order to deliberately foster the impression that there is something always wrong with their victim, and no matter how hard the victim tries, they are going to be inadequate and never good enough to meet the standards of the manipulator. The thing here is that the manipulator only wants to focus on the negative and the bad things that go on. With regular criticism, there may be some bad things that come up in the discussion, but the other person is going to provide some feedback and some solutions that the victim can work on. With manipulation, the manipulator is just going to focus on the negative without providing any constructive or genuine solutions, and they never offer any meaningful ways to help the other person. They just like to say and do things that will make the other person feel bad. Using the silent treatment. We are all guilty of using this one at some point. We will get mad at someone or feel that they slighted us in some manner, and we will stop talking to them. We think that we are making them suffer some when we don't give them our attention all the time, and that by making them sweat it out for a bit, we are more likely to get what we would like. Many manipulators are going to use this tactic as well. By deliberately not responding to the reasonable emails, text messages, calls, and other communications from the victim, the manipulator is going to presume the power. They are making the victim do all of the work, and this can place some uncertainty and doubt into the mind of the other person. The silent game is really a head game, where silence can be used by the manipulator as a form of leverage against the victim. Pretending to be ignorant of what they are doing. The next type of manipulation that you may run against is what is known as pretend ignorance. This is pretty much the game of playing dumb. When the manipulator pretends that they don't understand what their victim wants or what the victim would like the manipulator to do, the manipulator will then make their victim take on what is their responsibility and can make the victim break a sweat a bit. There are a lot of examples of this kind of behavior in our modern world. Sometimes we will see children using this tactic when they want to delay, stall, and manipulate adults into doing for them what they aren't interested in doing, such as cleaning their rooms. We can also see this kind of tactic in adults as well. Sometimes grown-ups are going to use this kind of behavior or tactic when they are trying to hide some information, or if there's some kind of obligation or task that they are trying to avoid doing. Guilt baiting. The manipulator may choose to work with guilt baiting in order to target the vulnerabilities and emotional weaknesses of the target. The manipulator can do this in order to coerce the recipient of giving in and agreeing to demands and requests that are pretty unreasonable. There are several examples that can come up when you are trying to use guilt baiting as a type of manipulation technique. This could include holding the victim responsible for the success and happiness of the manipulator, or holding the victim responsible for the failures and unhappiness of the manipulator. The manipulator may also rely on targeting the victim's soft spot and unreasonable blaming. Victimhood. There are a lot of different examples of victimhood that can come from a manipulator. This could be things like the person playing that they are the martyr, powerless and weak. They could try to deliberately be frail so that they get more favor and sympathy from those around them. Sometimes there are imagined or exaggerated health issues, along with imagined or exaggerated personal issues. The purpose of this kind of behavior is just to exploit the goodwill of the recipient. It can also exploit the sense of obligation and duty, the guilt, and the protective and nurturing instinct of the other person in order to get concessions and benefits that are unreasonable and that the victim likely wouldn't give to other people who weren't in the same kind of situation. Modern advertising. Often, advertising is seen more as a form of persuasion compared to just being a form of manipulation, but sometimes it can be both. There are many well-known advertisers out there who will focus on using manipulation techniques in order to help them get what they want out of the other person. They can use foot in the door, which shows you that other people want the product and more. Many of us like to think that we are too smart to fall for the manipulation that is in commercials, online, and more. But as time goes on, many marketers are becoming even better at their jobs. They are supposed to convince you to go and purchase one product over another, or even to purchase the product when you don't need it. If they are successful, you will part with your money to get the product, and the company can make some profits. Even if we think that we can't be manipulated by advertising, this just isn't true. Any time that you go to the store and purchase a particular product over another, there is at least a partial inclination to do so because of advertisements that you saw. Sure, you may pick it for the price, or because it tastes good, or because it looks good on you as well. But at least a small part of your decision was because of some advertising that you saw in the past. As you can see, there are many different examples of manipulation that can show up in your day-to-day life. Depending on the people you spend your time with, you may find that there are a lot of different types of manipulation that could show up in your life. Learning what these are and how to use them can also ensure that you are able to get the results that you want when you are trying to manipulate someone else. Chapter 3. What are some of the advantages of using manipulation? Manipulation has been given a bad reputation. Oftentimes we hear about manipulation in a bad way, hearing that it is going to harm the target or cause issues for others, while the manipulator gets to run off and enjoy what they want. And in some cases, this is exactly what manipulation is all about. However, there are also times when the process of manipulation can be a good thing. A salesperson trying to sell a car to their target is making sure that the target gets the vehicle that they want. A family member who is trying to get their child into therapy after a drug addiction may use manipulation in order to get them the treatment and the help that they need. Moreover, if you've ever heard a spiel about a fundraiser or a good cause, there are going to be some forms of manipulation present there as well. There can be a number of good benefits that come from using manipulation. Whether you are working with manipulation in a good or nefarious manner, you will find that the manipulator, and sometimes the target, can see a bunch of advantages in the process. Some of the advantages of using manipulation include: can help you get to what you want. The main reason that people like to work with the idea and the process of manipulation is the fact that it allows the user to get what they want. In a world that there are wants other than time, knowing that you can walk into any room and talk to any person you want and get them to agree with you or do what you want can make a big difference. It is an enticing thing that many people are interested in learning more about, but if you are able to learn how to make it all happen, it doesn't matter what you want to get out of someone else. Manipulation is going to help you to get there. Whether your intentions are good or not, manipulation can help you out. You could simply want the other person to help you out with a project, or grab something for you for lunch when you are too busy to leave the office. Or it could be something much bigger. Manipulation is going to be able to help you to get what you want. Can make you more confident. You may find that working with manipulation is a great way to help yourself gain some more confidence. Many times we give up the things that we want because we are too shy, or we are too worried about what others think about us. We may even be worried that the other person is going to say no to us, and we aren't sure what we are going to do once the other person does tell us no about something. However, when you are working with manipulation, you will learn the right techniques that are needed in order to make sure that you get what you want. You will learn the things that you need to say and do to ensure that your target will always agree with you. Think of how much this can help build up your confidence if you know that you can walk into any room and get the other person to agree with you, no matter what you ask. Can help you get in the relationship that you want. There are times when you will be able to use manipulation in order to get someone to go out on a date with you and to ensure that you are able to get into the relationship that you are looking for. For those who have had trouble and some struggles with finding someone to go out with them in the past, this could be some welcome news. It may be that you just need a little bit of confidence and a bit of communication, and you are set to get someone to go out with you. You don't have to make this something that is sneaky or evil. Plus, that is not going to be the best way to get a new relationship up and going. However, you can use some of the techniques that we will talk about in this guidebook in order to help you to get that relationship going. For example, if there is someone who you are interested in, you can use a few different techniques. Maybe you start to spend more time with them in a platonic setting so that you can get more comfortable with each other and learn more about what they like and dislike. This can help you to tailor your message to work the best for the personality of that person. Another option to work with is the foot in the door method. This is where you would get them used to a bunch of small requests first, so that they get in the habit of saying yes to you. You could ask them for help with a project. Ask them if they think you are a dependable person, and then slowly lead into asking them if they would be willing to go out with you. After they have spent some time getting that person to say yes to you, once you bring out that big request, they are more likely to agree, and you can get the date that you want. Another option is to start out with a really big request and then taper it off with a smaller request later on. You could start out with asking the person of interest if they would like to go on a big vacation to Europe or on a cruise with you. If you have only just started spending time with that person, they are going to feel hesitant and surprised by such an offer. But then you can ask them if they would rather just go out on one date with you next Friday night. After the shock of the big request and the fact that the person may feel a bit guilty about already turning you down, it is more likely that they are going to say yes to this second request. You will find that either of these two methods can be effective in ensuring that you get the person of interest willing to go out on a date with you. can benefit the other person. If you are using manipulation in the proper manner, you will find that it not only benefits you, but it can benefit the target as well. There are two main types of manipulation, and some of these are just going to benefit the manipulator, and others are going to be able to benefit all of the parties that are involved. For the first group, the manipulator is just going to work on gaining their own benefits. They don't really care what happens to the target. In fact, the manipulator may be just fine taking advantage of the target, and even causing them harm, as long as the manipulator is able to get what they want out of the situation. This can be hard on the target. Often they will take years of abuse and mistreatment because they don't even realize that the manipulator is in their lives. In these situations, the manipulator has made it so that the target feels that they have no choice but to go with the manipulator. There is a codependent relationship going on here, and the target is more than willing to agree to what the manipulator wants, even though it may not be the best for them. It can take a lot of work to get out of this situation, and it can go on for many years before any changes. In the second situation, the manipulator is a bit nicer. They aren't going to focus so much on only getting what they want, although this is a part of the endeavor. The manipulator will be able to get what they want, but the target is going to be able to get what they want in the situation as well. The target is not going to get harmed in this situation, and the manipulator is going to try to do something that will benefit and help out the target. A good example of this is a salesperson. If the target goes out to get a car, they are going to deal with a little manipulation in the process. The salesperson will want you to go with a certain brand or type of car, or maybe the most expensive vehicle that they can, because this helps them to get more back in commission. They will push what they want at the target, and the target can decide if they want to get the vehicle. In the end, if the salesperson is successful, both parties are going to benefit. The target is going to leave the lot with a good vehicle that can help them to get back and forth to school and to work, and the salesperson was able to get the sale and the money that they are looking for. Both parties were benefited in this whole process. Regardless of the method that is used with manipulation, the point is that the manipulator is going to be at least one of the parties benefiting and getting what they want. The target may or may not benefit at all, but the manipulator, when they are successful, will be able to see some benefits in the process. Can help out a certain cause. There are times when manipulation is used in a manner that can help out a certain cause. If you have ever received an email or seen a commercial for some special cause or fundraiser, then you have seen this in work. With all the different types of charities and fundraisers out there, these organizations need to be able to convince you that it is best to spend your money with them rather than with someone else. And because of this, they are going to use a lot of manipulation on those who see their message. No matter which charity or organization that you go with, and even despite the fact that the organization is using some manipulation against you, it is still going to help someone else. The money is going to help some individual, animal, or another group that needs help, and this can end up benefiting everyone. The organization is able to help those who need the help get the assistance that they need, and you get a feeling of doing something good, and even a tax break at the end of the year if you choose to do it. Can help a business to make some money. One of the biggest places where we see manipulation in our day-to-day lives is from advertisements. There are thousands of companies in our country, and each of them is trying to work and get your attention and convince you to spend your hard-earned money on their products rather than spending that money on something else. In any of the advertisements that you have seen in your life, whether they are on the radio, on a website, on social media, print, billboards, or somewhere else, you see some form of manipulation in place. Companies know that they need to be able to use manipulation against the other person or their target audience in order to get them to make the purchase. the more successful the company can be with manipulation, the more likely it is that their target audience, or at least more of their target audience, will go out and purchase the product. And this can definitely benefit the company behind the advertisement, because all this interest is going to translate into more sales for them. The negatives of manipulation. Even though there are a lot of benefits that come with using manipulation, there are also some negatives that can show up as well. Unless you have a lot of experience working with manipulation, it is likely that things could go wrong. The first issue is that manipulation can backfire, and often in a big way. There are many people who can sense when they are being manipulated, and once they sense it, it can bring out a lot of resentment. If someone thinks that you are trying to manipulate them, exert power over them in a way that is sneaky and more, then it is likely that that person isn't going to trust you in the future. And if you were successful at manipulating that person, even if they aren't begrudging about giving you what you wanted, they may start to withhold something from you to make sure they get even. It is even possible that the manipulation is going to turn into a power struggle. Your target won't like it if they find out you have been playing with their feelings. Once they start to feel like that is what is going on, the power struggle is going to escalate, and trust can go right out the window. Another issue is that we will sometimes try to manipulate others before we even think, before we even know what we want, or before we even evaluate the possibility of asking for it in a direct manner. We may habitually go right towards manipulation. This can sometimes lead to the assumptions that can corrode the relationship that you have. There are a lot of forms of manipulation that can become habitual when we are in a relationship. These can include guilt tripping, abusive criticism, and complaining, to name a few. Another layer to all of this power struggle is going to develop, even if we didn't intend this to happen in the beginning. And this all happens because we became too casual about our use of intimidation, emotional blackmail, and manipulation. In addition, the manipulation isn't always going to be enough to satisfy. If you got someone to do something because of manipulation, how do you know it is something that they really wanted to do or not? For example, if you bought a car because of a sneaky sales pitch, is there still a chance that you will purchase another car? If the manipulator got what they wanted, but the price was a sense of secrecy and mistrust, is that really what the manipulator wanted? It can be tempting to use manipulation to get what you want. It seems like the easy way for you to get what you want out of the other person, rather than spending a lot of time working on trying to do the work on your own, or trying to convince the other person to say yes. But in the long run, if it doesn't end up benefiting the target, or it doesn't make sense for others to help you, then it isn't the best option for you to choose to go with. Some people are going to find that working with manipulation can work well for them. They may be able to perfect this kind of process and get others to do what they want, without a lot of issues along the way. But for most people, this could end up being disastrous if they are not careful. You have to learn the right techniques to use to make sure that this is a successful endeavor and actually gets you what you want out of life. Chapter 4. Simple Mind Control Techniques to Use. While we will take some look at some of the manipulation techniques that you can choose to use on your target, we are going to start out with some of the techniques that you can use with the idea of mind control. Mind control is a more intense version of manipulation, where the manipulator is going not just to influence the thoughts and decisions of the target, but they want to be able to control every aspect of that target, whether it is their thoughts, actions, or feelings. In this chapter, we are going to talk about some of the real mind control techniques that were traditionally used not just by ordinary people in interpersonal relationships, but also in a group. Understanding how these work can help you to either use them if you need to really influence the other person, or be aware of the manipulation that could be done against you. Some of the most common techniques of mind control that can be used will include isolation. The first technique that can be used in mind control includes isolation. Humans are very social creatures. They like to spend some time talking with others, spending time out in public, having close friends and family, and spending their time in more social situations. When we take this social aspect away from many individuals, it can change the way they look at life. Complete physical isolation can be the most powerful. This is when the subject is taken away from all contact with others, including email, social media, phone calls, and physical contact. This is something that has been seen in cults and with other groups. They will often take the person far away from others, and then the only human contact that the person can have is with the captors. Now, this total physical isolation can be really hard to do, and it is usually only done in really intense situations. If you are just trying to use manipulation, you usually don't want to go through and completely isolate the target, but it is common for a manipulator to typically try to attempt their target mentally as much as possible. There are a number of methods that the manipulator can use in order to get what they want with the help of manipulation. They could include some seminars that last a week in the country and isolate the person from what they would usually do. They could be a lot of criticisms of the person's family and close friends, so that the target feels bad and stops seeing them. It could be jealousy that keeps the target at home and limits the amount of influence that anyone outside the manipulator has on the person. Once the manipulator is able to control the information that goes to the target, they can share the information, withhold information, and do anything that they would like in order to continue influencing the target as much as they would like. The target is going to become reliant on the manipulator, and this is how the manipulator is able to work and get what they want from the target. There are no outside influences to tell the target that something is wrong, or that they should watch out, and this ensnares the target even more. Criticism. Criticism is often used as a tool for isolation, but there are times when it can be used all on its own. Manipulators like to use criticism because it can make the other person feel insecure and like they are doing something that is wrong. The criticism can be on a lot of different topics, from the clothes the person wears, how they look, who their friends are, and even their beliefs. When a manipulator is trying to work with criticism, they often like to mask it behind a compliment or make it sound nice, with a little jab at the end. This allows them to use the criticism, but then fall back on the idea that the other person, their target, is just being sensitive or misheard them if the target becomes upset about the criticism. Usually the criticism is going to start out pretty small. The manipulator won't want to start out with something that is big, because no one likes to be criticized. And if you start out with something that is big, you will find that the target will just run off and not be around you any longer. The manipulator knows how to make comments that sound just a little bit hurtful and can plant a seed of self-doubt, but which aren't huge or even that noticeable. They could start out with something like, "I didn't know that green was your color. I think you should ditch it." This one basically says that you don't look good in that color and can make fun of the clothes that the target is wearing. They may even choose to say something like this when you got really dressed up and excited for a night out, or when you are wearing your favorite outfit. There wasn't necessarily anything mean about the thing that they said, but it was enough to plant some self-doubt in the person, especially given the tone and the situation at hand. Over time, the manipulator is going to start making more obvious criticisms in order to place some more self-doubt in the minds of the individuals they are directed at. This can make the target more reliant on the manipulator, because they start to feel like there are so many flaws in themselves, and that no one likes them. They see the fact that the manipulator is still near them as a sign that the manipulator cares, and they will start to do more and more that the manipulator wants in appreciation. The manipulator may choose to criticize the outside world so that they have a better chance of claiming their own superiority. According to the manipulator, you should feel so lucky that they chose to associate themselves with you. They make themselves seem really important so that they can convince you that they are important, and you should feel great that they want to spend time with you. Peer pressure and social proof. All of us like to feel like we can belong in a group. Some are really centered on the idea of fitting in, and they will strive to do everything that they can to be the life of the party, to be liked, and so much more. And even those who are more introverted, the ones who like to spend more time at home rather than going out and partying and socializing all the time, like to make sure that others like them and that they fit in. A manipulator is able to work in order to use peer pressure and social proof against you. They know where you tick when it comes to fitting in and getting others to get along with you. They will convince their target to do something because others do it, or because it is the best way to help you to fit in. Whether or not it is true, it is likely that the target is going to agree to it and will go along with what the manipulator wants. Those who want to manipulate a bigger group of people, such as those who want to get others to donate in their cause, are typically going to use social proof and even some form of peer pressure in order to brainwash the newcomers. You will find that social proof is a phenomenon where some people assume that the actions and beliefs of others are appropriate, and they assume that because everyone else is doing it, then the actions are justified. It often doesn't matter what the other action is at all. In fact, this is why we see a lot of people participate in activities that may not be seen as acceptable in society once they get in with a group. This can work well when the individual is already uncertain about what they should think, how they should behave, or what they need to do. When people enter into these situations, they're going to take a look at what others around them are doing, and then choose to do those same actions, no matter what they are. The manipulator is able to use this to their advantage. If they find a new target to work with, they will need to either implement them into a group of others who have been manipulated by that same person, or just try to convince the target that everyone else is doing the activity. Just by using this social proof and some peer pressure, if others are involved, the target is more likely to go through and do what the manipulator wants. Fear of being alienated. No one wants to be alienated. They want to feel like they are a part of the group. They want to feel accepted as though they belong. This is never more apparent than when we see a newcomer. When someone is new to town or to school, to work, or somewhere else, you will notice that they are trying to figure out how to join into the group and get them to accept them. They are worried that they are going to be alienated, and in order to avoid this, they will do everything in their powers to get others to like them and go along with them. And this is where the manipulator can come in and get what they want. Newcomers who start to join a new manipulative group are usually going to receive a welcome that is very warm, and they will form a number of new friendships that seem to be much deeper and have a lot more commitment and meaning behind them compared to anything that they were able to experience in the past. There are several reasons for this one. First, this gets the target to feel welcome and more indebted to the group and the manipulator. They are thankful that they have these deep connections, and it is usually easier to get a friend to go along with something as compared to a stranger, so it works to the benefit of the manipulator as well. Add in that the target is scared to be alienated, then they are going to do what they can to keep the relationships going strong. If there are any doubts that end up arising in the future, these relationships are going to become a powerful tool to ensure they stay with the group. Even if they aren't completely convinced, the target will start to remember their outside world, the world that they had before joining this group, and it is going to seem cold and lonely. They will instead choose to stay with the group, even if there is some manipulation going on. Repetition. The more that we hear about something, the more likely it is going to stick. This is one of the methods of mind control that a manipulator is able to use to their advantage if they keep repeating their message and using the same tools on their intended target to get what they want. Constant repetition is another persuasion tool that is powerful. Although it may seem like a simple tool, one that is too easy to be effective, the act of repeating the same message as much as possible will ensure that the message is familiar and easier for the target to work with. When the repetition is combined with some social proof, it is going to ensure that the message is delivered without fail and that the manipulator is able to get what they want. The existence of affirmations, which is a technique that is usually used in self-improvement, is another proof about how well repetition is able to work. If you are able to persuade yourself to believe or do something through repetition, then think about how easy it can be for someone else to use repetition in order to manipulate you to think and behave in a certain way as well. This method may seem really simple to work with, but it is effective and will provide the manipulator with some of the best ways to get you to do what they want. Fatigue. How well do you make decisions when you are tired? Do you find that you just want to go to bed, and this makes you tired, irritable, and very moody? Often the decisions that you make are going to be questionable, and you may agree to do things that you would never have agreed to if you had gotten enough sleep. This is another technique that the manipulator is able to use against their target. They know that their target isn't going to be able to make some great decisions during this time, and they are going to use this to their advantage. They will make sure to find you when you are the most tired, and then make the requests that they want during this time. Fatigue, as well as sleep deprivation, is going to result in anyone feeling tired, both mentally and physically. When the target is physically tired and less alert, they are going to find that it is hard to stand up against some of the persuasion that someone throws at them, especially if it is done by someone who is skilled in persuasion and manipulation. You don't have to go very long before this power of persuasion can start to take effect. This is bad news for the target, but good news for the manipulator. According to some research that has been explored in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, individuals who have not slept for 21 hours straight were more susceptible to suggestion. Think about how many times you have missed out on one night of sleep. If you are a parent, have stayed up too late working on a project for work or school, or ended up going out with some friends and staying out too late, you have easily gone for just 21 hours without getting the sleep that you need. And sometimes you may go even longer. However, with that short amount of time, it can be enough for you to not think in the manner that you should, and the manipulator is able to get what they want out of you. Think about what would happen if you were able to go for a longer period of time without sleep. If the manipulator could catch you after a few nights of the baby teething or a few nights cramming for an exam, what would they be able to convince you of that you would never agree to in the past? What the manipulator worked to create was a situation that was going to keep you awake. This is usually seen as something that is a bit more extreme, but it is possible that the manipulator will go through a process to isolate their target, and they may even work to make sure that this person isn't able to get the amount of sleep that they need. If they could limit the amount of sleep, maybe allowing the target to have only a few hours of sleep a night for a week, or keeping the target awake for 30 hours, think about what the manipulator would be able to get the target to agree to in the process. Forming a new identity. This is one that is more likely to occur during the more extreme forms of manipulation, but it is still something that we need to take a look at. In some situations, the manipulator is going to try and redefine the identity of their target. This is going to ensure that they are able to get more of what they want out of the person. If they can get the target to give up their old way of thinking and doing things and end up with a blank slate, they are able to go through and fill in that blank slate with anything that they want. In this case, the manipulator wants the target to stop being themselves, and they want them to become a robot, someone who is willing just mindlessly to follow their orders. Using all the methods and the different techniques of mind manipulation that we have talked about in this guidebook, the manipulator is going to try and extract a confession from the target, some kind of acknowledgement that the target believes the manipulator is a good person and doing a good thing. Of course, there can be some slight variations to this, but it is pretty much the same idea no matter how this form is used. At the beginning of this technique, it may be something that seems pretty insignificant. The manipulator may be trying to get the target to agree that the other members of the group are fun and loving people. It could be the manipulator trying to get the target to agree that at least some of the manipulator's views are valid. This may seem like a pretty simple thing to work with, but it is priming the target to start thinking with and agreeing with the manipulator on some things. Once they can get the target to agree with them on some of the little things, it is much easier to get them to move on to some of the bigger things. Before you know it, out of the desire to be consistent with what you do and say, you would then find that the target starts to identify themselves as one of the group. This is something that is going to take place in the long term. It is impossible to change the whole personality of someone in just a few weeks even. This can sometimes take a few years or more to happen. The manipulator knows that if they try to push the ideas on their target too quickly, the target is going to run away because they know what is happening. However, when they are brought into the group slowly and given time to think about it and learn more about it, they will find less resistance in the long run. This idea can be really powerful if the target knows that their confessions were filmed or recorded. There are many manipulators who are willing to record some of the things that their targets do and say. This allows them to have physical evidence to use against the target if the time comes. This may be a form of blackmail, but it is an effective way to make sure that the individual is able to stay in their place when it is needed. In addition, if the target ever forgets, this physical proof is going to show the new identity and shows the individual who they really are now. Are these examples really found in my life? Now that we have taken a look at some of the most common mind control methods, you may be wondering whether this is something that actually goes on in your day-to-day life. While some of the topics that we talked about earlier are to the extreme a little bit, and they may be used by big groups or cults more than by regular people that we come across in our daily life, this doesn't mean that we can let our guard down and not watch out for them at all. Each of these examples can be used to a lesser degree by manipulators we cross each day. They are often going to be those in our lives who want to get certain things from us, and they will try to use any tactic that they can to get it. Making sure that you are aware of them and aware of some of the groups in your life who are using these same ideas can help you to maintain control over your life and ensures that no one else is able to take the control over. Let's take a look at a few examples of some of the groups you may encounter in your life and how they could try to manipulate you, often without you even realizing what is going on. For the first example, we're going to take a look at what could happen if you joined the group of Greenpeace. Maybe this process started with a small donation after you heard about the group because you wanted to help them out. Then, at some point later, you were invited to go to a fun event of some type, and you went and made a lot of new friends in the process. Over time, before you know it, you are all of a sudden sitting in a little boat, protesting something such as drilling in the polar region, and you left all of your education and your big career plans on hold back at home. At this point, you may be wondering what happened here. Did Greenpeace really use some manipulation in order to get you to do this? In reality, no. They didn't really use manipulation, but rather they worked with their influence in order to get you to do something that was important to you. While they were able to get you to do something that you wouldn't have considered doing in the past, Greenpeace isn't using you for their own advantage, and the whole thing is beneficial to both of you. When Greenpeace did talk to you, they asked you to do what you thought was right. You were allowed to agree with them or not agree, and you wouldn't have been ridiculed or isolated if you came up with an answer that was different from theirs. They asked you what you thought about one topic or another, and you agreed with them. Then you started to work with them towards this new goal. There was no personal gain that was done here for Greenpeace, and you were free to come and go as you pleased. However, there are times when situations that are similar to this one can be used as a form of manipulation. Let's say that there is a controlling karate teacher, one who uses a lot of verbal and physical abuse towards their students. At the same time, this same teacher still expects that there are total obedience and admiration in return from the students. The teacher may even convince the students that they are the only group of people who are about to be told a special secret, one that is going to put other karate masters to shame. In this case, there is some benefit to the manipulator. The teacher may have motives that are financial, but there are times when the desire is to have more control and to feel superior in some way to the other students in the class. But no matter what the benefits are, the teacher is going to use some of the mind manipulation techniques that we talked about above to get what they want. Chapter 5. What are some of the ethical parts of manipulation? The next thing that we need to consider is whether there are some ethical concerns that we need to be worried about when it comes to manipulation. The main question that comes up here is whether manipulation is always something that is wrong or not. The main question that comes up here is whether manipulation is always something that is wrong or not. How do we tell if the manipulation is something that we need to be concerned about or not? Let's take a look at a few different views of manipulation to determine if it is something that we should have some concern about or not. Is manipulation always wrong? Let's take a look at a scenario to help us illustrate how this can go. Let's say that Megan is a captured terrorist who has gone through with her goal of hiding a bomb in the city. The course of action that she would like to use is to keep the location of the bomb a secret so that it can explode and harm as many people in the process as possible. Now, let's say that Irving comes into the picture. He is an interrogator for the FBI. He knows that Megan has hidden the bomb in the city, and he wants to get her to reveal the location of the bomb before it explodes. How would this way of filling the details of the case change up our moral assessment of the different ways that Irving could use in order to try and get Megan to change her mind? The extreme answer here is that it wouldn't change up the moral assessment. There is a very hardline view, and it is the one that holds that manipulation, no matter what form, is always something that should be seen as morally wrong, no matter what the consequences are in the process. Of course, most of us would think about those who are going to be harmed by the bomb, and we may be willing to go with less strict guidelines when it comes to manipulation. We may suggest that Irving try other techniques to get the information first. However, as time runs low and we still haven't found the bomb, more people may be willing to allow for some manipulation to ensure that the bomb is found and turned off and that innocent lives are saved. The less extreme position here is that while manipulation is going to be wrong usually, there are sometimes other moral considerations that would outweigh the wrongness of manipulation. With this idea, we believe that manipulation is usually wrong, but that if there are some other moral factors in play, those could be stronger and could make the manipulation more balanced, and sometimes even balanced. However, how do we determine what these factors will be? And are they going to change based on each person who you talk to and with each situation that you look at? One of the obvious ways to tell would be the consequences. In the example above, Irving, being successful with manipulating Megan and getting the information that he needs about the bomb, could save a lot of innocent lives. In some cases, non-consequentialist factors could be things that you would want to consider as well. Perhaps the character of Megan, or the fact that she is acting with evil intentions or desire, could be enough of a factor to outweigh the wrongness of what Irving is doing with the manipulation. One thing to note here is that, on this view, the fact that the action will need to have manipulation is always going to be a moral reason to avoid it, even if the stronger considerations render it not wrong on balance. Hence, what this means is that while it may be fine for Irving to use manipulation to get the location of the bomb and save lives, if he is able to get this information without using any manipulation, then it is better to go with those other methods from a moral standpoint. To contrast this, you could hold manipulation to be prima facie immoral. When we are taking a look at this view, we have the presumption from the start that manipulation is actually immoral, but the presumption is going to have a few situations that will defeat it. When this presumption has been defeated, it is seen that manipulation is not wrong at all. When we are using this view, we may say something like, manipulation is usually wrong, and we should try to avoid it, but we wouldn't see it wrong all the time. In the terrorist example above, we would say that the use of manipulation isn't a bad thing at all. There is a more complex view as well, but it is the one that is probably the most plausible. This one is going to combine together the pro tanto and the prima facie approaches. This view would hold that for most situations, manipulation is going to be immoral, but when it is wrong, the wrongness is going to be more of a pro tanto rather than an absolute. When we look at this view, there are going to be some circumstances that come up in which the presumption that manipulation is wrong will be defeated, and when this happens, the manipulation isn't going to be wrong. But where the presumption isn't going to be defeated, the wrongness of manipulation is going to be absolute. However, the idea that manipulation is going to be presumptively wrong could be challenged by some people. One could easily argue that manipulation is a morally neutral term, even without taking a look at the presumption of immorality. When we use this kind of view, whether a given instance of manipulation is immoral will completely depend on the facts that come with the situation. The term of manipulation in and of itself is going to have no presumptions one way or another, and there are also some non-moralized notions of manipulation in some cases. For example, when we talk about a scientist who goes through and manipulates some of the variables of their experiment, or a pilot manipulates the control of the plane, there isn't going to be any good or bad that comes with the term. As you can see, there are a lot of different versions and thoughts that come with manipulation, and knowing whether one is right or not can be a challenge. Each person often has their own method of figuring out what manipulation is, and that is why determining the ethical considerations of manipulation can be almost impossible. No matter how we answer this question, to determine whether manipulation is absolutely immoral or not, there are clearly still some situations, with almost every definition, in which manipulation is going to be seen as immoral. Any complete answer to this question will need to list out the times when manipulation would be moral and when it would be immoral. But it does often depend on the definition that you use and the situation that you are taking a look at. Manipulation and harm. One of the easier methods that you can use to explain the wrongfulness of manipulation when seen as wrong is going to point to the degree of harm that it does to the target. Manipulation is often seen as something that is used in an aggressive manner, as a way to harm the target, or as a way to benefit the manipulator, often at the expense of the target. The harmfulness of manipulation can be really salient in these relationships, because the manipulation has the potential to lead to some form of subordination and even some abuse. In addition, when we look at the minor economic harm of the extraction of money from consumers, it is often pointed to as a wrong-making feature of manipulative advertising. And then there have been those who want to bring up a discussion about how manipulation could lead the target to sign contracts that exploit them and harm them. It is commonly held that harmfulness is always going to be a wrong-making feature. This means that it is pretty reasonable to think that instances of manipulation that are going to end up harming the victim will be seen as immoral. There are instances where the manipulation won't harm the victim at all, though, and sometimes the manipulation is able to benefit the target. If the harm that occurs to the victim is the only wrong-making feature that shows up with manipulation, then the beneficent manipulation could never be even pro tanto wrong. Of course, this is something that seems implausible to most people. The fact that it seems possible for the act to be wrongfully manipulative, even if it is meant to help and benefit the target, explains why there aren't any defenses that manipulation is wrong only when it ends up harming the target. Manipulation and autonomy. One of the biggest accounts of wrongness when it comes to manipulation is that it is going to violate and undermine the target's own autonomy. The idea here is that the manipulator will take away a bit of the free will of the target in order to get what they want. But this can be up for debate as well. In some forms of manipulation, the manipulator will not care how the target gets harmed. They will use screaming, threats, and demeaning to get what they want from the target, with the idea that they need to be happy, and it doesn't matter what the other person has happened to them. If the target does somehow benefit, then that is fine with the manipulator, as long as they get what they want as well. In these instances, though, the manipulation can often result in a very abusive and controlling kind of relationship. The manipulator wants to have the control. They want to make sure that the target keeps doing what the manipulator wants, and they will keep on harming the other person. They will find different ways to get the target to agree with them, and they will often say that they have given the target the free will that is needed to make the decisions. However, because of the way the situation is set up, and the way that the manipulator has ingrained themselves in the life of the target really feels like they have no choice. When the target tries to speak up for themselves and talks about what they want to do or why they no longer want to do what the manipulator requests, then the manipulator will resort to threats, making a scene, guilt trips, and anything else that they can do to make sure that they get what they want, and the target is usually going to oblige. In these situations, even though the target may think they have the choice in the matter, they really don't. The manipulator has all the control, and the target would have to really stand up and hold their ground in order to get that autonomy back. It is going to be hard, and many targets, despite their best efforts, continue on in the vicious cycle that the manipulator has set up for them through a lot of time and work. In these cases, the manipulation is not right. The manipulator is getting what they want out of the situation, but the target is not getting anything, and often the target is getting harmed in the process. This can spell out a disaster for the target. They will feel defeated, like their opinion doesn't matter, and they may have trouble doing anything without the manipulator. However, there are also times when the manipulation can do wonders for both parties. There are forms of manipulation that are good for both parties, and both parties are going to end up getting what they want out of the process. These situations may be looked at a bit nicer because the target isn't getting harmed. Sure, the manipulator is doing things in the hopes of getting what they want, but they are trying to benefit the target. They allow the target to have free will, and the target can walk away without any of the common manipulation tactics being thrown at them, and the target is not harmed at all. Chapter 6. The Analysis. One of the first steps that you can work with when it comes to manipulation is the analysis. When it comes to this part, the main goal is that you want to be able to create a situation where you understand the person and their tendencies, at least as well as they do, if not more. You want to be able to know the other person intimately. You want to know their way of thinking, their likes and dislikes, their behavioral patterns, and more. The reason that you want to do this is that it provides you, as the manipulator, with a way to identify the personality profile the victim falls under, and helps you to know the best way to manipulate this other person. Before you are able to go through and perform this kind of analysis, you need to know what you are looking for in the other person, what the personality profile is all about, and exactly how this would affect the decisions of the other person. When you have all of this information, you will then be able to follow the lead of someone as you start to learn more about them. You can then change things around and get the other person to follow your lead. What am I looking for here? When you are doing your analysis, you will always need to look for the same things. You want first to identify the body language of the target, their vocabulary, their tone of voice, the way that they self-express themselves, and anything else that you can study that will help you know what that person is thinking and feeling at any given moment. The point of doing this is that you want to come up with a clear understanding of who that person is, why they make the decisions that they do, what is a baseline behavior of theirs, and more. That way, when they stray away from these, you will know it, and you can even guess why they are making these changes. As you get more into the analysis, you will need to look at all of these things, but you will also be able to take this information and learn more from it. Rather than just being able to understand the receptiveness and the defensiveness, you will also be able to know why and how someone has become defensive at that period of time. This is going to help you to learn the personality profile of the target, and then you can create a map and a plan of what you should do to manipulate this person in an effective manner. What are these personality profiles? These manipulation personality profiles are pretty much the personality type that the person has that will specifically affect the way that you are able to manipulate that person. These profiles are going to be made up of a series of personality traits that will give you direct information on what drives the other person. There are 3 main personality profiles. However, you should note that each individual will have the 3 driving factors that fit into the profiles, but they have each one in a different percentage. These driving factors are going to include emotion, ego, and logic. As you can see, everyone has these, but some are going to rely more on their logic, while others are going to rely more on the emotions. These are the 3 factors that will have the power to completely shape the way that a person thinks, what their goals are in life, the things that they like, and the things that they don't like, and any other information that the manipulator will need. As a manipulator, your goal is to look for the driving force that influences your target the most, and then you can look for the one that drives them the second most as well. The one that drives them the least isn't going to be that important when it comes to the process of manipulation, but it is still good to know about it. The driving factors, or personality profiles, are going to play a massive role in how we go through and make decisions in our lives. Each unique personality driving factor also has the power to determine what we are more inclined to say yes to. The 3 driving factors and how they show up in each individual is below. 1. Logic. Those who are driven by logic are the ones who are driven by the things that make sense to them. They are going to rely a lot on evidence, facts, and statistics to make their decisions. When they are choosing something, they like to question things based on their validity, and they like to look for how credible a source is when they are given evidence to look through. 2. Ego. The people who are driven by ego are going to be driven by things that can make them look good, or things that are going to enhance their social skills. These people rely heavily on evidence that will point to social status. They find it important to look good in front of their peers. If you are able to convince them that they will, these people will agree to do anything that you ask. 3. Emotion. Those who are driven by the emotions are going to be driven by things that can make them feel good. Taking some time to remind them of happy memories or things that help them to feel good can be a good way to make them agree with you. They are also going to be more likely to respond to strategies that are based on fear, as they are always on the lookout for anything that protects their emotional state. Techniques for the analysis. Now that we know a little bit about the analysis and how it works, It is time to learn a few of the techniques that you can use during the analysis. Some of the things that you will want to analyze when you are looking at your target and picking out a manipulation technique for them include body language. When it comes to the body language of the other person, you will want to look at specific movements that are going to make it easier to identify which personality profile people are the most likely to fall into. Let's take a look at what the body language looks like for each driving factor. Logical. Those who are in the logical category are going to have body language that is very quizzical. When they are trying to take in some new information, their eyes are often going to be narrowed, and they will tighten the eyebrows a bit in the middle as they focus their attention on what the other person is telling them. When this person talks, they are going to spend their time talking specifically on facts. They are able to recount the facts that other people have told them in the past. They can recall what they have read online, and even what they have heard in the past. They will also always be on the lookout for some statistics that are going to support their own position. In addition, they are going to keep a stance that is very neutral, as they are receptive and defensive in the positions that they hold. When they have a conversation with the other person who has the same way of speaking and who is also very factual, they are going to be receptive. In fact, when talking to someone similar to them, they are going to become softer. They will get excited. Their hand gestures can become more elaborate. If this person is in a conversation where they feel that the factors that they have are right and the other person has the wrong opinion, they are going to put the defenses up, and they will look for ways to protect their facts. This can even show up in a physical manner, because they could let their hands become tense. They could have some confusion or anger on their face, and when they speak, they are going to be very matter-of-the-fact and short. Egotistical. Those who are driven by their ego are going to have a giant sense of self. They want to make sure that their confidence is up, and to appear like they are the best person in the room. They want to be the one everyone looks at, the one that others admire, and the one who everyone wants to praise. For this reason, they are very expressive in the way that they carry themselves. When you are looking at this kind of person, they are going to stand with their head held high, and their posture is going to be fairly straight, as though they are intentionally generating a sense of confidence just by the way that they hold themselves. They also work to look proud of everything that they do and everything that they are. Everything that these individuals do physically, from how they dress to how they carry themselves, is going to be intentional and is meant to give off a good impression to others. The more ego-driven and less self-assured they are, the more manufactured their look is going to be, and the confidence that they have is going to be a form that isn't really genuine. Instead, confidence has been designed so that the individual can draw the attention of others to them. If the individual is embarrassed at all, they can become angry and defensive, and they will try to blame someone else for putting them in this spot. Emotional. Those who are driven by their emotions are going to be really receptive to what is going on in their environment. They will pay attention to everything. They will also be concerned about everything and are taking in everything that they see and hear. They want to make sure that there is some protection to their feel-good emotions, so they want to stay on the lookout for anything that can help them achieve these emotions. When these individuals are in positive and uplifting environments, they are going to be receptive, and they will continue to stay there. They can often have a smile on their face and keep their posture soft. This includes keeping their arms down by their side, and their posture is going to be open to receive any positive feelings from the environment. However, if the feelings from the environment start to become negative or toxic, the emotional person is going to start shutting down. You may notice that their face drops, and they will close themselves off physically as a way to protect themselves against anything that they don't think feels good. They may slouch their posture, lean back, cross their arms, and let their face close off by going to a neutral expression. These individuals are the least likely to respond with any outward defensiveness or aggression unless they are really provoked by something or someone in their environment They usually have to feel pretty strongly about something before they will express this, because they like to lay low and let the environment do its own thing. Verbal cues. The next thing that you can take a look at here is the verbal cues. These are going to be so important when it comes to helping you determine which personality profile your target is in. There are a lot of ways that you can predict how someone is feeling and thinking, and what drives them. And one of the methods is how they speak. Some of the cues that you should look for in the different personality types include logical. When you are working with someone who is considered logic-driven, you will notice that their tone of voice is often very matter-of-fact. They have a lot of confidence in what they are saying, usually because they took the time to research the topic before they started talking. If not, they are able to recount facts that they had heard about in the past. When these individuals make mistakes about something, they are able to shrug it off in order to protect themselves because they don't want to appear to be the person who doesn't know all of the facts. They often will say things like, "I once read," "I was told," and "in fact," to allow them to recount some of the evidence that they were able to encounter in the past. Egotistical. Those who are driven by their emotions are always talking in a manner that will help them express themselves and their concern for their own social status. They like to spend a lot of time talking about pop culture, often sharing stories about high-class members of society, such as celebrities, and they will do this in a way that makes them sound like they actually know that person. The ego-driven person is going to talk about looks and whether or not something is considered socially acceptable at any chance that they get. They are often going to say things like, "What are they thinking? I can't believe so-and-so would do that," and "I would never do that," in order to prove that they are always comparing themselves to someone else and other people, to their idols. Emotional. When you look at an emotionally driven person, you will find that they are going to talk in a way that helps to emphasize their feelings and the tendency that they have to feel everything. They are very sensitive and sentimental when they talk to others, and you can often hear this in their voice. These individuals are going to struggle quite a bit at keeping their emotions a secret, and you will notice when someone is upsetting them. You will also notice when something excites them as well. When you are talking with an emotionally driven person, you will notice that they say things like, "I feel," or "that feels," on a regular basis when they talk about the feelings that they get from something. They may also describe the things around them using feelings. They are more likely to say things like, "That's a cold-looking apartment," or "That's a happy-looking tree," to help explain how something makes them feel good and what makes them feel bad. How to build up a personality profile. When you are looking at your target, there are going to be two profiles that you need to look for, two profiles for each person, the primary and the secondary profile. This is how you will be able to get a clear idea of what drives someone and how you are able to use these particular driving factors in order to figure out the best ways to manipulate your target. The primary profile of your target is going to be built based on which categories the person falls under. Remember that everyone is going to have all of these personalities in them to some degree, but there is going to be one that they fall under the most. For example, if the target has a strong tendency to judge others, and they carry themselves in a proud manner, then they are likely to have a primary personality type of ego-driven. If they are receptive and soft, and you can tell that they carry themselves in a more expressive manner, then they are most likely emotion-driven. The secondary profile is the next profile that they will fall under. It isn't going to be as strong as the first one, but it can still influence what the person is going to be like. Once you have been able to identify the primary profile, you can then look at the two that are left and decide which one would also help to define your target the best. Once you have both of these profiles identified, you can begin to create the manipulation map so that you can determine how you will go and manipulate your target. Creating a manipulation map. The manipulation map is pretty easy to create. Once you know the profile that comes with your target, and you learn a few of the different techniques that go with the process of manipulation, it is going to be easy to create the manipulation map. You can then create a manipulation map that works directly for the target, so that it is effective for their needs. The analysis is a very important part of working with manipulation. You can't just jump into the process and assume that you will be successful. Instead, you need to spend some time getting to know your target, learning what makes them tick, and what works the best for them, if you really want to get what you want out of that target. Chapter 7. When should I use manipulation? There are going to be certain times in your life when you will find that manipulation is going to come in handy. While you know that it is so important to practice in as many scenarios as you can, there are going to be ones that you will find manipulation will be the most useful. In this chapter, we are going to focus on the best places where you can use the skills of manipulation so that you can get ahead and really benefit from the things that you have learned so far. Business negotiations. When it comes to working on some negotiations in business, it is easy to see how you want to make sure that you can get your way. Getting your own way will usually mean that you want to close a better deal, one that is going to be highly favorable to your own company. Closing these deals and making sure that they are in your favor will mean that your company is able to get most, if not all, of the things that it is asking for, and that you will barely have to deal with any inconveniences in the process to do this. There are a lot of things that you can negotiate during these meetings, such as better terms on the deals, better pricing on the services, and more. And if you use your skills in manipulation, you are more likely to get the whole thing to work in your favor. When it comes to negotiating on some better deals for the business, you will find that manipulation is a very powerful tool for you to use. Whether others like to admit to this or not, negotiations are rarely fair, and there is usually going to be a person who comes out on top. You want to make sure that the person who comes out on top is you. When you use manipulation in these efforts, it means that you are easily able to dominate the conversation without the other person even realizing it. When this happens, others in the negotiation are more likely to give in without even doing a fight, because they think that they are getting something good out of it as well. Because of this, and all the good benefits that you can get from this, you should bring out the manipulation skills that you learn as much as possible when you are working with a business negotiation. Closing sales. If you are at all involved in a sales process at some point, then you know that it is not always easy to close sales. If you work in retail, for example, you likely notice that many of the people who come into your store are dreaming and looking around, and sometimes they won't be prepared to buy anything. Because of this, it can sometimes be valuable to know how to manipulate people, as you can encourage them to spend money that they did not otherwise intend to spend. What this means is that when you get the other person to purchase something through your manipulation techniques, it results in more sales for the business. If you are the one who owns the company, you know how important this is. If you are an employee, you know that effective numbers of sales and good sales strategies means that you are more likely to be respected by your employer, and then you can make it up the ladder of the company. If you are in a sales position that is considered business to business, then you know that manipulation is so important. People who end up going to a meeting with you are likely interested in what you are going to offer, but they could also be shopping around to a few different companies at the same time, and you need to find ways that will put your business ahead of all the other choices that they are considering. Knowing how to use the right skills of manipulation at any level of sales means that they can close more deals, and that they will be left with happier customers. This only means that good things are going to be available for you in the future. Getting prices that are better. You can use manipulation from the other side of the perspective as well. If you are the customer and knowing how to manipulate during this time can be highly valuable. As you know, many times the salespeople have been given some room to negotiate with their customers in order to encourage sales. This means that if you are willing to use some manipulation and work with them, you can get a special and better deal. You are able just to take the price, but wouldn't it be much better for you to go through and get a better price if you are able to? Being effective at manipulation means that you can easily manipulate companies to give you the best in deals for services and products. By promising them your praise and services, for example, you can essentially get them in the palm of your hand. They become far more willing to communicate with their managers and negotiate the best possible deal for you, so that you will actively buy from them. Salespeople, especially those who are based on commission, are always eager to close a deal. This allows you to use manipulation in order to get the deal to close in your favor. Leading the desired lifestyle that you want. Each person has a goal about the desired lifestyle that they would like to have, but the lifestyle that you have right now and the one that you desire might not always be the same thing. However, the good thing about using manipulation is that you are able to use it to help you get to the desired lifestyle. There are a lot of ways that you can do this. You just need to learn how to make it work. Let's say that right now you are living in a house that you are renting, and you want to buy your own home at some point, but right now the types of homes that you are the most interested in purchasing are not within the price that you can purchase. However, with the right kind of manipulation, you may find that you are able to get a better deal, putting you into the home of your dreams sooner as you would like. This can work with any of the big-ticket items that you would like to purchase, such as cars. Another way that this can work is with some of the relationships that you are in. If you are someone who would like to find a new group of friends, the friends who are going to help you reflect your new lifestyle, you may find that working with manipulation is going to help you out. You can also use the art of persuasion to convince others to become your friends and spend time with you, and from that, you will then have the friends that you need to live this new lifestyle. Take this a step further and see how it can work with some of your intimate relationships. If this kind of relationship doesn't look like the one you would like, then you can bring in some manipulation and see if it is possible to make the right changes towards a better relationship. If you want to have more romance, for example, you would spend some time with fancier places or people. Getting out of things. Have you ever gotten into a situation where you were asked to do something, but you didn't have any want to do it? All of the time we are going to be signed up for things or given offers that we aren't really that interested in, and sometimes it can feel difficult to turn these things down in a polite manner. Depending on who is asking for the favor, you may feel obligated to help them out with it. However, once you learn how to work with manipulation a bit more, you will find that this is not as big of a problem for you anymore. You may even find that this is a good place to start when it comes to practicing your manipulation. You can bring it up any time that you get stuck doing something that you would rather not be doing. Not only are you able to use manipulation for your benefit to get out of the reunions or things that family and friends want you to help out with, but you can also use it at work as well. If your boss went and signed you up for something that you don't want to do, you can use manipulation to convince them to let you get out of it, or you can convince someone else to go and do the work for you. You can use manipulation in any manner that you would like to make sure that you are able to live the life that you want. It can help you to get the business negotiations to work the way that you want, to help you get the friendships, relationships, and to get yourself out of the things that you don't want to do. There are just so many different things that you are able to use manipulation with, and this can be a great way to ensure that you have the life that you have always dreamed about. Chapter 8. Common Manipulation Techniques that Work. Manipulation techniques can be nice to work with, because they will allow you to determine how you would like to request something from your target or another person. Since you already know what you want to request from that person, the only answer now is to determine how you will make that request. You can do so easily by following the guides below for 3 of the best manipulation requests that exist. Let's take a look at a few of the best manipulation techniques that you can use in order to manipulate anyone that you want. Knowing when they are ready. Before you can get started with manipulating anyone, you must know when they are ready. You can't just get started with manipulating them without laying some groundwork, and if you just jump into your plan without knowing that person. With basic manipulation, you will often need to start out using the starting small request on some level to get your target saying yes often. Once they are in the habit of saying yes on a regular basis, so that you are able to get them to say yes with the big request. When you are working on more advanced manipulation techniques, the cues are going to be a bit different. While you do not want your target to say yes on a regular basis, you also want to make sure that they keep their body language open and receptive as much as possible. This means that you need to really watch the body language that the other person is sending your way. You want to look for nodding, for some clear signs of interest from the target, such as eye contact and having their feet and body pointing towards you, and that they have an understanding of what the conversation is all about. You also want to make sure that they have plenty of information so that they can make a decision to work with you towards whatever your request is. The good news is that once you witness these signs of receptiveness and the openness from your target, you know that they are ready to hear your request and that they are more likely to say yes. Starting small. The first technique that we are going to take a look at is the idea of starting small. With this one, you're going first to need to consider the personality type of the individual you are working with. This ensures that you ask the questions in the right way, and that you are sure to ask the escalating requests throughout the conversation in the right manner. What you are going to request and the way that you request it will depend on the personality type. So let's divide them up and see how you can do this method with each personality. The logic-driven. For the personality type that is more logic-driven, you will be working to persuade the target with lots of facts. If you become too vague and you don't find the right kinds of facts, you will turn them off from you, and they are less likely to say yes to the request at all. The request is going to come in when you ask them to trust your facts. Some of the ways that you will choose to word the request to the logic-driven person would include: 1. I read one time that this was the best couch that you can purchase on the market today. I'd have to say, I agree. Do you? 2. I feel like I've heard that this car is the fastest in the world. Have you heard about that? 3. I give back what I borrow every time, and I feel like I'm a reliable person. Don't you agree? When you go through and word things in this manner, you are basically requesting for people to agree with you and confirm the facts that you are sharing. This gets the other person used to saying yes, and to even that your facts are reliable, which is something that can really be important to logic-driven people. As you may have noticed, the word feel is going to come up as well. This shows that the person is primarily a logic-driven personality, but their secondary profile is going to be more emotion-driven. When do you finally get to the point where you want to talk to the target about the big request, rather than just getting them used to the idea of saying yes to you? You would still use the same methods for getting them to agree with you, even though the request is going to be a lot bigger. Some examples of the ways that you could ask your big request to your target, especially when they are more logic-driven, could include: 1. You know that I always give back anything that I borrow from others, so can I please borrow it? 2. There really isn't a better couch that you can purchase. Are you ready to purchase yours now? 3. Are you ready to purchase the fastest car in the world? When you try to embed a truth or some important information into the request, you are really going to appeal to the person who is driven by logic, and you can make it easier for them to agree with you. Notice that there isn't any kind of force that occurs here. You are simply trying to show the logic of the decision to the other person, that your method is the best, and that they can decide whether they want to go along with it or not. Your wording may make it harder, and they are more likely to agree with you, but they do still get to decide if they would like to walk away or not. The ego-driven. For the personality type that is driven by the ego, you will need to go through and change things up, and you will need to make sure that you appeal to the ego, or the idea that the person needs to be seen as the best person in the room. You can then go through and manufacture your requests to appeal to this need by using words that will talk about how that product or that request will make them look, and how it is going to make them appear to other people at the same time. When you are working on your requests to your ego-driven target, you will need to make sure that you are always worried about appearances and some of the ways that the target would like to appear to other people. Some of the ways that you could word your request to an ego-driven person would include: 1. I am so grateful for the help I got. Friend's name is literally amazing for helping me out. Don't you agree? 2. This could definitely make your living room look like something straight out of a design magazine. Who doesn't want to have the fanciest furniture? 3. Many celebrities drive this car. It definitely commands the road. Can you imagine all the heads turning to see you drive by in this car? Because you are taking the time to compare things and people to a high social class directly, the person who is driven by their ego is going to be more likely to agree with you when you word the small request in this manner. Also, there is still going to be some fact-based evidence, so you can use it if your target's primarily personality is egocentric, but their secondary one is more fact and logic-based. After you have had some time to work on the smaller requests and gotten the target to agree with you about some small things, it is time to make the official request. Some examples that you can use to help you to word the request for your ego-driven target includes: 1. So, is this the fancy couch that you want to show off to your next guests? 2. Are you ready to own the hottest car in town? 3. I would be so grateful if you could help me with this that I would literally bow down to you. It would mean that much to me. When you embed the request with something that makes it clear that it speaks directly to their social status, it makes it easy for any ego-driven person to agree with you. They get the choice, but it can help when you use it this way to get the ego-driven person to agree with you. The emotion-driven. Now we need to take a look at how to work with the emotion-driven individual. When it comes to these kinds of people, you need to make sure that your requests are able to appeal to their feelings. You want to make sure that you are using the types of words that talk about how they will feel about certain things. And then you need to take it a bit further and get them to affirm those feelings by agreeing with you. Some of the wording that you can use when you are working with the smaller requests, something like this. 1. I really feel like I am a reliable person and that I have always been honest and caring to those who are willing to help me out. Don't you think so? 2. This couch is made from a material that is going to continue to be soft for years. No matter how much time you sit on it or how much you use it, it is going to stay cozy and soft. I just love the idea that it will stay this cozy forever, don't you? 3. This luxurious car has the nicest feeling leather seats out of any car I've ever sat in. Plus they have heat warmers with 3 settings to ensure that you will be comfortable no matter what. Wouldn't you love that? Since you will word these in a way that has a lot of feelings with it, you are easily appealing to the emotional drive of the person you are targeting. There are also some logic-driven words inside it, so if this is the secondary personality of your target, then that is taken care of. After you have spent some time using the above options to get the other person to agree with you a bit, and they are then in the habit to agree with you, Some of the phrases that you could use to help with this include 1. It would be so amazing if you were able to help me out with this. It would be a lifesaver, and I would feel so grateful for your kindness. Can you please help me? 2. So, are you ready to make your home even cozier with what might be the softest couch on the planet? 3. This truly is the nicest and most comfortable car to own. Are you ready to take home all of this comfort with you? The this or that method. The next technique that you are able to use when it comes to working on manipulation would be the this or that technique. This one is a bit different than the other one because you won't have to start out with a series of smaller requests in order to get to that final request, the request that you really want them to help out with. The this or that request is a good format that you can use if you don't have as much time to use the series of requests to get the target to agree with you. This method is going to take a lot less time to set yourself up for this request, and you can use it no matter what kind of personality type that you are dealing with. And based on the kind of request that you are going to ask for, you could easily format this technique in order to support any of the secondary personality types that you want as well. Let's take a look at how you can work on this technique to ensure that you are able to work with each of the different personality types that are available. The logic-driven. For the personality type that is more driven by logic, the format that you will want to use with this technique is going to be simple. The only thing that you will need to do is make sure that the first offer is something that is logically unsound, or something that doesn't seem that rational at all. Then you can make the second part of the offer something that is really logical, something that can be computed easily, and is easy for the logic-driven person to follow with. Some examples of what you could say when using this technique with the logic-driven person include 1. Would you rather go with the less expensive and the less trustworthy device, or the one that is seen as more reliable but is slightly higher cost? 2. Do you want to give up the warranty and run the risk of having to replace the item later on? Or would you rather pay a small fee now and get the product replaced later on without any questions asked? 3. So, are you going to say no at this time and avoid having a hard conversation and make the awkward situation so much worse? Or are you going to have the conversation and get the problem over with so you can move on? As long as you are able to make sure that the second option is the sound option, and the first one sounds pretty irrational, you will be able to get the logic-driven person to agree with the option that you want. The ego-driven. Now we need to move on to the ego-driven person. When you are working with the this or that method, you will want to exchange the logical facts that we used before and move them over for words that are more ego-driven. You want to make sure that you start out by offering something that sounds like it is going to reduce the social recognition, respect, or class of your target, and then you can offer something like it is going to nurture the social recognition, class, or respect for the target. Since the other person isn't looking to compromise their own social status, the ego-driven person is always going to make the choice to help preserve their own social status. Some of the examples that you would use when it comes to using the this or that method of manipulation include 1. Would you rather go with the cheap option that looks like just another average device? Or would you rather spend the extra and get the option that everyone else is talking about, and that is clearly superior to any other device on the market right now? 2. Do you want to forego the warranty and then run the risk of something going wrong and you can't replace the device? Or would you rather spend the money now and secure the device with no questions asked replacements if something did happen? 3. Are you going to choose to avoid this conversation now and look like you are the person who is scared, or like you just can't handle the topic? Or are you going to be the bigger person out of the two and deal with the situation right now? The point that you want to work with right now is that it should be clear that the first choice that you present is much less desirable for them and could result in them having the status for them compromised, and then the second one will nurture or even promote their social status. then they are going to go along with what you are requesting. The emotion-driven. You can make some simple adjustments to ensure that you are able to use your this or that technique in order to work towards the emotion-driven person. You will start out by offering something that would be potentially make the person feel bad if they chose the option, and then you could provide them with a positive alternative that sounds like it would make them feel good. Remember that with the emotional person, you will always choose in favor of supporting and preserving the positive emotions that they have. This means that they are always going to choose the option that makes them feel the best, and you want to make sure that they will go with the option that you want. Some examples of how you would word your information or request from this kind of person includes: 1. Would you rather pay less for the device now and then deal with the disappointment and frustration of having the device not work that well for you? Or would you rather pay a bit more and have a device that is reliable and easily available when you need it later on? 2. Do you want to forego the warranty and deal with the potentially devastating situation of having the broken device that cost a ton of money to replace? Or would you rather make sure that you can protect this great investment and receive a hassle-free, no-questions-asked replacement service? 3. So, do you plan to avoid the conversation and then deal with the anxiety and grief that you know would happen? Or would you rather go and face it right now and get the peace of knowing that you can move on because it has been dealt with? An offer that the target can't refuse. And finally, we're going to take a look at another method of manipulation that you can use, known as an offer that they can't refuse. Giving your target a good offer, one that is too good for them to refuse, means that you are definitely taking into consideration the primary as well as the secondary personality profiles, and that you are wording the request so that it becomes pretty much impossible for them to make a refusal to their request. This is another one that you can easily adjust to make sure that it can tailor the secondary profile as needed. You can just make some changes to the words that you choose to use in order to ensure that you are speaking in a way that will appeal to the primary and the secondary personality types. Let's take a look at how this can work and some of the steps that you can take to get the best results with each personality type. The logic-driven. First, we are going to take a look at the person who is driven by logic. When you are trying to make one of these offers to someone driven by logic, you must make sure that it has a ton of evidence and facts attached to it, and that you make it clear how there isn't a reasonable way that the person should pass up on what you are trying to offer to them. One way that you are able to do this is to tailor your request so that it has a lot of facts that support what you would like them to do in the end. Some examples of how you would be able to do this, especially if their secondary personality is emotional, includes: 1. Have you decided that you are ready to show yourself some self-love by investing in our brand new spa package that is complete with 6 different spa treatments? Each of them are uniquely designed to improve the health and appearances of your body with the help of technology that is state-of-the-art. 2. Are you planning on instilling your trust in a person who has never let you down in the past, knowing that I care way too much about your friendship to compromise it? 3. So are you going to invest the lower sale price today and go home with a television that is high quality and that is guaranteed to give you and your guests the best viewing experience possible? The ego-driven. The next personality that we need to take a look at is the ego-driven person. When you want to get a person driven by ego to agree to your offer, you must make sure that there is a lot of emphasis on the fact that agreeing with you will maximize their social status and credibility. There are a few ways that you are able to do this, including adjusting the request with evidence that those who are from a higher social class are agreeing with these same requests. This will encourage your target to see that they can agree with it too, in order to keep their social status in place. Some of the examples of what you can do and say to make one of these offers to an ego-driven person include: 1. Have you decided that you would like to take advantage of our new spa package? It has 6 different treatments, each of which is considered the rage in all of the latest celebrity gossip circles. 2. Are you going to install trust in someone who has never let you down in the past, knowing that, in return, you will get the service that is the best quality? You will be able to show this service off and know that you were able to save money because you invested in a friend. 3. So how would you like to take this new television home so that you can show it to your friends today for an extremely low sales price? The emotion-driven. The next thing that we need to take a look at is how to make one of these offers to someone who is driven by emotions. To do this, you need to make sure that you can provide the other person with an emotional payoff that is positive. When you can assure the other person that they will feel really good after they agree with you, then you can make it as easy as possible for them to do anything that you request. Just remember here that the emotion that you are going for is positive ones, not negative. Some examples of how you would word these offers they can't refuse would include: 1. Have you decided to show yourself some self-love with our spa package? Each of the 6 spa treatments is going to help you relax and enjoy the peaceful and serene break from your daily life. 2. Are you willing to trust me, knowing that I am never going to let you down because I care too much about our friendship and because I just want what is best for you? 3. So would you like to take advantage of the really low sale price? This allows you to bring the TV home with you so you can start to enjoy it and make memories around a higher quality resolution today. Chapter 9. What to do if you get caught. Many people fear that if they are using some of the techniques that come with manipulation, that something bad is going to happen if the other person or their target figures out what they are doing. After all, the public opinion about manipulation is that the process is generally frowned upon, and most people are under the idea that manipulation is only going to be done when the manipulator is ill-intentioned. The idea of getting caught while performing these acts can sometimes be enough to convince some people not to use it. Of course, your goal is not to get caught when you are using these techniques. It is a possibility at some points. This can happen at any time, whether you are brand new to using these techniques or if you've used them for some time. A simple slip-up could be enough to get the other person to catch on to it. And if someone is already well-versed in how to spot manipulation, it is going to be even easier for them to figure out what is going on early in the game. The good news is that getting uncaught in what you are doing is really simple. It is a good idea, though, to learn how to do this, and to get the right skills to get uncaught before you ever need it. Hence, this chapter is going to take a bit to explore some of the things that you can do and some of the steps that you can take if you do end up getting caught by your target. What not to do. The first thing that we need to understand is the things that you should not do when you get caught. If you are new to this game, you may find that it is easy to say and do the wrong things, which is going to make the situation so much worse. It is instinctive to go on the defense when someone catches on to what you are doing, and you may say something like, 1. What are you talking about? I'd never do that. 2. Are you kidding me? That's what you think? 3. I can't believe you would think that of me. These are all unhealthy types of manipulation that are meant to place some guilt and blame on the other person, and they are a sign of immaturity in this process. They are found in some processes of manipulation that are intended to take advantage or exploit the other person, rather than to bypass them simply, and it is best to find some other methods to help you get uncaught, rather than resorting to these. When you get caught, this can sometimes be your first reaction. If you are only going to use manipulation in order to encourage an honest and thought-out answer, rather than the predetermined no, you may still find that you are outraged and a little upset that anyone would think in a negative way towards you. The point to remember here is that despite your initial reaction, you need to be able to find ways to override it. Do not, under any circumstances, try to displace the blame, create any feelings of guilt in the target, or even deny what the other person is accusing you of. The first reason for this is that you would be lying if you did. If you were unable to reverse the situation completely, then this turns you into a liar and a manipulator. And the second thing, extreme defensiveness, is a big sign that you are guilty. Even if you don't realize it, you are pretty much admitting that you are guilty of whatever the other person accuses you of, and this can make it impossible to defend yourself down the line. So, even if it may seem like the right thing to do at the time, don't get defensive, and don't try to shift the blame over to the other person. This is just going to make things more difficult in the long run. Will make it so that the other person starts to assume that you are guilty of what they accuse you of, and so much worse. What to do instead? Now that we have talked about what you need to avoid if you don't want to arouse the suspicion of the other person, you may be wondering what you should do instead to get them off your trail. Instead of trying to blame the other person or trying to defend yourself, there are two things that you can do right after someone starts to accuse you of being a manipulator. These are simple, and they are going to offer you the best hope of getting things back on track and getting the accusations to stop. The first thing to do is stop every effort of manipulation that you were participating in before. Stop using persuasion, stop making requests, and stop doing anything else that you have been utilizing in order to manipulate the other person. If you are accused of using these tactics, and then you continue to use them, no matter the level, then you are just giving the accuser further evidence to justify their belief that you are manipulating them. The thing that you want to strive for here is to make sure that there is no evidence for the target to link the manipulation back to you. Instead, you want to make it appear that the thoughts about manipulation were just in their head, and they were overreacting to the situation. If you keep using your manipulation tactics, then the target will see that you are actually trying to manipulate them, and they will stop being near you or paying attention to you. You want to make sure that you are creating the illusion that the manipulation was just in the mind of your target. You may want to say something like, "I can definitely see how you think that. I am so sorry. That was not my intention at all." You want to apologize, but keep that apology short and sincere. Do not admit that you were manipulating them, but let them know that you understand where their concern and thoughts are coming from. With this method, you do not agree with them that they were being manipulated. Instead, you are showing that you understand them. Your target is not going to expect you to apologize or agree for the behavior that you did, and they will decide that it was all in their mind, or that you were overreacting to things. When you completely stop doing everything manipulative that you did before, and you make sure to apologize for what they believe to be manipulation, you are going to get the target to doubt what they accused you of. And sometimes there is going to be a level of guilt for even accusing you in the first place. In some cases, they are going to feel bad enough about the accusations, especially since you have now given them reasons to doubt what they had said, that they will want to find some way to make it up to you. And once this happens, you have the target right back where you want them. So to help you clarify this point, you want to go against your instincts when someone accuses you of being a manipulator. You don't want to get defensive, and you don't want to try and hide your trail. Instead, you want to make sure that you get them off your trail. You want to make them start to doubt that you ever tried to manipulate them in the past. Once you are able to do that, with the tips that we discussed above, you will find that you will be successful with manipulating any target that you want. How to get back on track. Once the target is at the point of doubting their accusations towards you, and they may even feel a little bit guilty because they pointed some fingers at you, it is time to slowly and intentionally get back on track with the whole process of manipulating them. Remember that you have to take your team here. The other person is already on the lookout for anything that seems odd. They may be doubting themselves, but this doesn't mean that they have let you off the hook quite yet. This means that you don't want to jump right back in with full force. If you do that, the target is going to catch on to what you are doing, and they will walk away for good. Instead, you must take your time and work your way back up to manipulating them. The good news is that you can just start back up with the 3 main steps that are needed to make manipulation successful in the first place. First, you will need to take some time to analyze the other person. Notice how your conversation is going, what the other person is saying to you, how they are responding to the things that you say, and what their tone is like. If the target has already pointed fingers at you and made some accusations, then you need to slow down and wait to rebuild some of that trust with them again before you get started with the manipulation again. The amount of time is going to depend on the individual you are working with. Some are going to be easier than others. Once you notice that the target looks a bit more relaxed and like they have started to open up to you again, then it is time to restart the manipulation. You want to make sure that the target has some time to trust you while being in a pressure-free zone that has no attempts at manipulation before you dive right back in again. If you jump past this part too much and you miss out on giving the other person enough time, then the other person, who is already on the defensive, is going to catch on to what you are doing and will put their defense up again. If you have already been caught, it is important that you take your time. Being caught a second time means that you are going to lose out on that target, and who knows what other damage could occur to that relationship and to other prospective relationships that you may have in the future. Taking your time can help you get back on track once you are caught, and will ensure that the other person isn't going to run off and make it impossible to manipulate them again. Once you have been able to work on your analysis, and you are certain that the other person has had time to get comfortable with you again, and you notice that the conversation has begun to flow freely again, then you can start to introduce the manipulation back into the conversation. Take your time, just like with before, and try to be as subtle as possible with this. Your goal here is not to tip off the target that you are working to win them over again, so tread with caution here. Go slowly, and then build your way up to where you were in the past, and where you would like to be in the future. This part of the game is not all about speed or a race of some sort to get back to the top. If you do this, you will end up losing the other person, and your goal of manipulation will be all gone. Take your time and be patient. Try out a few of the techniques of manipulation and see how they go. This can build up over a longer period of time, depending on how well you know the other person and how often you get to see them. If you take it slow and steady, you will get yourself back at the top. You just need to be willing to take your time, watch the cues that the other person is sending over to you, and learn when it is time to press forward and try a few more of the techniques that you know, and when it is time, just to wait a bit longer. Once you have been able to manipulate the target again, and you are back to using all the different techniques that we have been discussing in this guidebook, you will find that the target is going to be more likely to agree with you. This can help you to build up your confidence again, and then you can bring out the full-blown manipulation requests once again. One thing to remember here is that you need to make sure that your manipulation request is different from what you were using when you got caught, and choose a request that is going to be subtle, one that is hard for others to recognize and catch on to. This can make it harder for the target to realize what is going on, and can keep you as the leader in this game for as long as possible. If you utilize the manipulation techniques that we have talked about in this guidebook, there is a very low chance that you are going to get caught by your intended target. But it is something that can happen. Once it does, you can follow the steps above in order to help you get yourself back on track. These techniques are going to be the best way to ensure that you get yourself uncaught and that you will be able to resume manipulating the other person at some point, just as if nothing happened. If you want to be really good at manipulating and getting others to do what you want, it is important that you know the proper way of displacing the blame and how to execute it, and then you must be able to cover yourself back up again. Approaching it in any other way is going to make it easier for the target to have evidence against you, and they will be able to prove that you are manipulating them. And once this happens, it is hard to regain the trust and control that you once had. Chapter 10. Watching your body language during manipulation. The next topic that we need to take a look at is the idea of body language and how it can work to help influence the other person. We spent a bit of time talking about the body language of the other person, your target, and how you can use this to your advantage. But you also need to pay some attention to the body language that you are showing to that target. If you are able to showcase a strong and secure person, someone with a lot of confidence, which is easy to get along with, and actually interested in what the other person is saying, you will find that it is easy to manipulate any target that you would like. Some of the things that you can concentrate on to make this happen include: make yourself look nice. One of the first things that you need to focus on when it comes to your body language is that you need to look nice. If you try to manipulate a target when you are in your pajamas, looking like a slob, and without good hygiene, then they aren't going to take you seriously, and they are likely just to walk away and not want to listen to you at all. There is something about likability that can make it easier for you to really get the results that you want. If the other person likes you or is attracted to you, they are more likely to say yes. But if you are not desirable to them, then they will find that it is easier than ever to say no. So how do you make sure that you are likable and that your body language and appearance will get the other person to like you? First, you need to work with basic hygiene. You will find that most people have an evolutionary attraction towards people who are clean, because these people were the ones who were considered the safest to be around in the past. We still have some of these traits, and this draws us to those who smell good and are clean. Plus, how are you supposed to get close enough to someone to manipulate them if you stink? The good news is that good hygiene doesn't have to be difficult to achieve. You can make sure that you shower on a regular basis, wear deodorant, brush your teeth each day, and use some nice perfume or cologne that isn't too strong, and you will be ready to impress anyone you come across. Next is to make sure that you have a nice haircut or style that suits you and makes you look good. You will find that how good your hair does look is going to affect the entire outfit directly. When you are talking to someone you would like to influence, your haircut is definitely something that they are going to notice. There are a lot of people who choose to ignore their hairstyles, but they still want to have a nice appearance to others. You also need to have some realistic expectations about things. If the haircut doesn't suit you, then it is time to let it go. You may have to experiment a bit to figure out which hairstyle is the right one for you. And finally, make sure that you don't dress crazy. Find a style or fashion that works well for you. You need to be able to impress the person you would like to manipulate, and going crazy with style, especially if it doesn't fit with you, is going to backfire on you. You may find that you can't go wrong when you are working with a simple and classic look. There is nothing wrong with having some fun with your style, but only if you really know what you are doing, and you don't try out something that looks horrible on you. If a person doesn't like the way that you dress and feels that your style is a mess, it's very unlikely that they are going to take you seriously. And in this kind of situation, it can be hard to influence the other person at all. Look directly at the other person. Your full attention needs to be on the other person when you are having a discussion on them. When you are having a discussion with them, eye contact can be a great way to form a connection with this target. But mastering the right kind of eye contact can be really hard to learn. You want to make sure that you are giving enough eye contact that the target knows you are paying attention to them and that you are actually interested in what they have to say. But if your eye contact gets too intense, then it can make the other person feel very uncomfortable in the process. Put on that nice smile. There is nothing better than a smile. A smile can show that you are open and receptive to what others are telling you. A smile can open a lot of doors. A smile can make the other person, your target, feel comfortable on another level with you. And people who smile are seen as more likable than others. What could be better than that? One of the most important things that you can work on when it comes to your body language during manipulation is to make sure that you put on that smile. You don't want to go with a big fake smile, though. Your target is going to be able to spot a fake smile from a mile away, and this can make them feel uncomfortable, or at least make them feel like something is wrong, and they are going to walk away from you as fast as they can. Learning how to have a genuine smile, even if it is a fake one, can be so important when trying to put the other person at ease. And if you are successful with it, this smile can help others to like you. It is a proven fact that your target is more likely to say yes to you if they like you. And since a smile is one of the easiest ways for you to do that, it is worth your time to learn how to do a great smile for your target. Pay attention to the way that your body is pointing. One thing that you should pay attention to when talking to your target is the direction that your body is facing. Most of us don't realize it, but with a lot of the conversations that we have, it is common to point the body away from the other person. We don't usually mean to do this, of course, unless we are trying to get away from that person and they just won't quit talking, but it can send off the wrong message to the target. When you point your body away, it can lead to some negative connotations. This body stance is going to really show a level of unfamiliarity between the two parties. And when your goal is to be familiar and comfortable with the target, this is not the message that you want to send out. It can also make the target think, at least subconsciously, that you are trying to get away from them, or that you aren't all that interested in the conversation at hand. A better way to stand is to make sure that the whole body is facing towards the target. You want your front, your feet, and your face to be pointing right at the target. This brings in a level of familiarity with the target and can make it easier for you to start up some rapport with them and get the results that you would like. It is a slight shift, only a few degrees in one direction or another, but it can make a world of difference in how far you get manipulating your target. Don't let anything distract you. When you are trying to manipulate the other person, your full attention needs to be on them. If you are constantly looking around at other people, your phone, and any other distractions that are out there, you will find that it is a big turnoff to your target. They will assume that they are not that important to you, and that you find a lot of other things more interesting than them, and you will lose their attention in no time. When you are manipulating your target, your full attention needs to be on them. Ideally, you will be in a location where it can just be the two of you, or at least a location that is a bit quieter so that you can focus on just them. Of course, this isn't always going to happen. If you do end up in a location that is loud and has a lot of people, then you still need to keep your full focus on that target, or at least for the duration of that conversation. If you struggle with this, then add it to the list of things that you need to practice. It is so important to get rid of all the distractions possible when you are dealing with your target. Turn off the phone. Make sure that the social media and the internet are turned off if you are dealing with them near a computer. Don't pay attention to the other conversations that are going on around you. And don't let the television or anything else distract you from the cause you are working on right here and now. Your target is definitely going to feel more at ease when you are able to give them your full attention. In a world where we have a million things grabbing for our attention, and we are asked to look in a million directions at once, it can be nice when someone is willing to put their full attention on just you. This is exactly how you want the target to feel as well. Try mirroring the other person. Another method that can work really well when you are trying to manipulate another person is the idea of mirroring them. This is when you try to copy what they are doing with their gestures and their body language, because it helps them to feel more comfortable around you subconsciously. If you do this in the right manner, they will find that they are drawn to you more, without even knowing why. There are a lot of little things that you can do to make this happen. First, you can look at how they are standing. Do they use a lot of gestures when they talk, or do they like to keep their arms folded? You can mirror this. Are they standing still or tapping their foot, tapping their fingers, or making some other small movements that you can notice? You can pay attention to the way that they are talking. Are there certain articulations that they are making when they talk to you, ones that you could use in your own speech as well? You don't want to make this so obvious that they feel you are teasing them, but making some minor adjustments in your own way of talking can help you to match up with them a bit more and can encourage the target to feel a bit more comfortable with you. Now, you don't want to make these gestures too obvious. If you are blatantly copying them and making it look like you are mimicking them, it is going to come off as you making fun of them. The other person is going to get defensive and offended at what you are doing, and they will just walk away and not talk with you any longer. This is why there needs to be a good balance with what you are doing. You want to be able to impress them and make them feel comfortable without them really catching on to what you are doing. This is something that can take some time to perfect. It is hard to get other people to feel comfortable with you, and while mirroring can be a great way to make that happen, it is a technique that takes some time and talent to accomplish. The best way to get better is to do a lot of practicing until you can perfect the technique. Stand a little bit closer. You don't want to be so close to the other person that you have invaded their personal space, but standing across the room isn't a good alternative either. There is a certain level of familiarity and comfort when two people stand relatively close together. This means that you can convince the other person that you are someone to trust and someone they should be near, just by moving yourself a tiny bit closer than you normally would. Think of it this way. How are you likely to stand near a stranger compared to near a close friend or family member? When you are working on manipulation, you want to aim for the latter, even if you don't know the person all that well. This makes it easier to talk with that person, allows you to hear them better and respond to what they are saying, and can instantly help them to feel at ease around you and like there is some kind of bond between you. Always pay attention to how the other person is reacting, though. Most people won't mind if you stand just slightly closer to them, but others are going to have a wider personal bubble, and it is important to respect that as much as possible. If you get too close to these kinds of people, you are going to put them on the defensive, and they will not want to spend time listening to what you have to say, and your tactics of manipulation will be hopeless. While it is important to pay attention to the body language of the target you want to manipulate, you also need to make sure that you are paying attention to the body language of your own first. If you get too agitated, don't look nice, and seem sweaty and nervous in the process, you are going to find that the other person just won't be drawn to you, and they won't be interested in listening to what you have to say. It is your job here to come off as likable as possible. You want the other person to look at you and feel like you are friends. You want them to trust you, and the best way to make these things happen is to be likable. It may seem a little bit shallow, but people respond better and are more likely to say yes to those who they see as likable. If you are able to follow the tips above, you will find that it is easier to become likable and to get people to say yes to you. Chapter 11. Manipulation in your relationships. The final topic that we are going to take a look at is manipulation that can happen in your relationships. These can be some of the most damaging kinds of manipulation. Oftentimes, you've become so close to the manipulator to the point that it is hard to tell the difference on what is going on. The target is often deeply committed to their manipulator and may even love them, so they are more likely just to excuse the behavior and not think that something bad is going on. This is how the manipulator gets what they want. They know their target loves them and that the target is going to be deeply into the relationship, and they will use these emotions to get what they want in the process. Sometimes the manipulator will still love the other person, but often it is more a thing of power and control, which allows the manipulator to get what they want, while the target is left with lots of confusion and emotions in the way. The worst thing about finding out that you have been manipulated while you are in a relationship is that for the most part, the target won't even know that this manipulation is happening. Manipulative people are able to twist around everything that you do. They can twist around your actions, your thoughts, your wants, and your desires until they are something that better suits the way that the manipulator sees the world. They will work to mold you into someone that is able to serve their own purposes, and often the target has no idea what is going on in the process. Thus, how do you make sure that you are not falling into one of these types of relationships? How do you recognize the signs of manipulation in your own relationship so that you can make the right decisions to make a difference and ensure that you won't be controlled by someone else any longer? Some of the biggest signs that you are in a manipulative relationship will include: the partner makes their target feel guilty for everything. Most manipulation is going to start with guilt. If your partner is able to convince you to feel some sort of guilt for the actions that you are doing, even if you haven't done anything wrong, then they know that you are more willing to do what they see. For example, the partner may say something like, I guess dinner was okay. It wasn't what I was hoping for, and I would have rather done something different. But I guess as long as you're happy, that's all that matters. This is a good example because it turns the tables around on you to make you feel bad in the process. On the surface, if you don't dig down too deep, it makes the other person seem like they are loving and supportive. But in the long run, they went and made you feel bad about the dinner that you picked. In some cases, the manipulator is going to try and make their partner believe that they are doing a great job of loving you. In fact, they try to make you believe that they do it so good that you are able to set aside some of the things that you want so that you can prove that you love them just as much. This is a vicious cycle of the target giving up more than they should in order to make the other person feel better. The partner forces their insecurities on the target. Manipulators are often going to try and force some of the insecurities that they have on you so that they can have some more control over how you react to them. This is common when the partner talks about cheating in the past and how the people their target hangs out with can make them feel really bad. While you do want to be conscious about the other person's insecurities, you have to remember that the struggles of the other person should never be allowed to define how your relationship is going to function. For example, if the partner or the manipulator goes into a fit of rage when you come home late and then tries to apologize about it by saying they are scared that you got hurt or that you are going to leave them, then this is going to be an example of the above. The whole purpose of doing these kinds of things is to take the focus off of your own worries and suck you back into the relationship. Remember that there is always going to be a fine line between showing that you care for the other person and being manipulated to feel just what the other person wants you to. Consideration is shown with love, and manipulation is going to be more about guilt. If the things the other person is saying leads you to feel a lot of guilt, then it may be time to look a bit more closely at the relationship. The manipulator makes the target doubt themselves. Want to know why it's easy for the manipulator to have some fun and manipulate the target in a relationship? It is because the manipulator has been able to mess with the mind of the target so much that the target no longer trusts themselves. Manipulators are really good at taking the insecurities of their targets and then using these against the target. They will always point out the things that the target is doing wrong and even list out ways that the target could do things better. They will point out the weaknesses and then offer advice on how to be better, do better, and more. And this is always done with the help of the manipulator. The point of this is to point out the things that the target is doing wrong and then allow the manipulator to come in and save the day. This process allows the manipulator to show that they have the interests of the target in mind, but in reality, they don't. The manipulator always has their own interest in mind, and to make sure that their own needs and wants, as the most important part of the relationship, they are able to twist the way that the target thinks. The manipulator makes the target responsible for their emotions. Sometimes the manipulator is going to seem a bit ironic in the idea that they are going to spend a ton of time making it seem as if the target isn't really able to think about anything on their own. However, then that same manipulator is going to turn things around and make their target responsible for the emotions of the manipulator. If the manipulator is ever feeling sad or down, it is because the target did something to make them feel that way. If the manipulator is ever feeling angry, this means that obviously the target did something to make them feel this way. For as much as the manipulator works to take things from their target, and for as much as they work to make the target think that the target can't control their own lives, they still expect that the target should hold all of the responsibility for the way that the manipulator feels. This is a lot of craziness in one place, but it is exactly the way that the manipulator is going to work against one of their targets. The manipulator convinces the target that they want what the manipulator wants. When you enter into a relationship, it is normal to come in with some deal breakers and some requirements that you would like to have met. This is all normal. It is also natural that when you are blending in two lives together, that there are going to be some compromises and some give and take in order to make sure that the two lives can become one and blend together well. What is not normal is when one person, the target, is expected to set aside what they want all of the time, or set aside what they need, just to appease their partner. If the target is in a relationship, and they realize that they are constantly meeting the needs of their partner, but their partner barely even notices that the target has some needs to start with, much less is willing to meet them, then you may find that you are in a relationship with someone who is manipulating you. There are a lot of dynamics that can come into play when you are in a new relationship. You are trying to learn more about a new person, and as you get closer to each other, and even as you work to move in together and start to build your life together, there are going to be times when you learn new things, compromise, and make some changes to the way that things are done. This is all a normal part of a growing and flourishing relationship. With that said, many manipulators are going to try and take advantage of this and get what they want. They are skilled at pushing just enough to get what they want, but not enough that the target is able to tell what is going on in the process instantly. This is why the relationship can often progress quite a bit before the target even has any realization of what is going on. In some cases, the couple may have broken up for one reason or another before the target realized what kind of relationship they were in before. Having a good understanding of manipulation and how it works, as well as learning how to recognize the manipulation that is going on in your relationship, can have a big impact on your overall happiness and health in life. If you notice more than one of the signs above in your own relationship, it may be time to reevaluate if you need to move on and get something that is better for your health. Conclusion. Thank you for making it through to the end of Manipulation. Let's hope it was informative and able to provide you with all of the tools you need to achieve your goals, whatever they may be. The next step is to start using some of the techniques and skills that we talked about in this guidebook to help you use manipulation to get what you want in your life. While manipulation may have a lot of negative connotations attached to it today, it is actually a great tool that, when used in the correct way, will ensure that your target is more likely to agree with you, without having to use force and other measures to get them to do it. This guidebook is going to show you exactly how to make this happen. Finally, if you found this book useful in any way, a review on Amazon is always appreciated. This has been Manipulation, a guide to mind control techniques, stealth persuasion, and dark psychology secrets. Written by Deborah Weiss. Narrated by Sam Slidell. Copyright 2019 by Deborah Weiss. Production copyright by Deborah Weiss.